Madam Secretary, will you take the roll, please?
Good morning. Director Carey,
Present.
Director Colson,
Here.
Director Fuentes,
Aye.
Director Gathing. Here. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven,
Here.
Director Lewis, Director Melvin, Director Pang,
Here.
Director Rotundo,
Present.
Director Ross,
Here.
Director Sager, Director Yonan,
Here.
and Chairman Dillard.
Present.
We have 11 present and 3 absent.
Okay, thank you. Now that we have a quorum, our board secretary has received a completed notice from Directors Fuentes and Yonan indicating that they cannot attend in person. And pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, they are deemed admitted unless there's a motion against it. Seeing none, Directors Fuentes and Yonan may participate remotely. Item 3 on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on August 15th of 2024. Any comments or corrections to the minutes if they've been sent to you? If not, how about a motion and a second to approve the minutes? And Madam Secretary, please add Director Melvin to the roll call. How about a motion and a second on the minutes? Director Ross moves, we approve the minutes, seconded by Director Carey. And Madam Secretary, can you take a roll call on the approval of the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, just to
Yes.
interrupt before we do the roll call, I just want to let all board members know that we are live streaming.
Excellent, thank you. Progress.
Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Colson, Director Fuentes,
Aye.
Director Gathing,
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Lewis, Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Rotundo,
Aye.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager, Director Yonan,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
We have 12 ayes.
Thank you. And those minutes are approved. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting. Any comments received will now be read into the record by the board secretary. Joey, did you get any written comments for today?
We have no written comments.
All right. And I believe there is one person signed up to speak. Austin Bush, are you here? Come on up. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Morning.
This button. Am I good? There we go. Okay, thank you for your time today. Also, following my last public comment, I'd like to thank the RTA staff and board for their letters and memos discussing RTA Act Section 2.6. And in case it may be considered otherwise, my comments reflect my own personal views today. Following last month's board meeting, I wanted to comment on the idea of a legacy project and what that truly means for our region. At last month's board meeting, Chairman Dillard suggested an O'Hare Express train might be Mr. Dewinski's legacy project with Metra. I personally hope that it is not, as it is emblematic of the costly problem of competition between service boards. The O'Hare People Mover takes over 12 minutes end to end, with Metra's North Central service dropping riders off at the furthest point. Meanwhile, the CTA Blue Line directly serves the terminals and has more stations downtown and runs higher frequencies. The North Central is just not fast enough to compensate. Far from being a legacy project, this is simply 2 service boards fighting over the same passengers to the detriment of the region. If we wanted to make it happen, there is a way to start an hourly express service tomorrow, but Metra itself stands in the way of implementing it. The Franklin Park station on the MD West line is almost as close as O'Hare's terminals as almost as close to the terminals as the multimodal facility. The MD West line also continues on to very populous Elgin and will soon reach Rockford. A short 15-minute shuttle bus service from the station, timed to meet up with Metra trains, would provide significantly greater access to O'Hare for all of Northern Illinois. This, however, would require Metra to closely coordinate with shuttle bus services, which brings me to my second point. Metra is not able to consider such a proposal because Metra does not, at its core, operate as a transit agency. Instead, it believes itself to be a railroad company, one which happens to move people instead of freight. RTA has allowed Metra to operate as a mode instead of an agency because it has never been truly questioned in its shared 50-year history. And if ever there was a time to change that at Metra, it might be following the collapse of daily commuter traffic and with state legislature seeking reform. I applaud Mr. Dewinski's developing culture of innovation at Metra, but I believe Mr. Dewinski's legacy should be taking Metra off the rails and onto the coordinated bus service. Multiple major activity centers are poorly served by the current regional express system, and there are many legacy-defining connections to be developed. Metra's regional rail is a concept uniquely in line with this regional transportation authority, but rails alone will not be able to fully connect our region. Metra isn't even the only entity operating a regional express service today. PACE runs express buses in direct competition to Metra under a separate fare structure and with slightly different terminal locations. Regional coordination by the RTA could consolidate this competition into a unified service that would see greater use. Instead of separating PACE and Metra by mode, the RTA could better organize the regional system by trip type and plan service accordingly. The best practice to follow would be that of Toronto's GO Transit, which runs a legacy rail system complemented by regional bus service. Under this model, buses offer an outer circle line between termini, and buses also fill gaps in rail service. For instance, PACE's I-55 Express bus could fill the gaps of the Heritage Corridor's 3 daily train schedule, replacing the need for IDOT's parallel freeway expansion. Examples like this show how the siloing of agencies by mode and by fare system have led to worse service at costlier prices for our region. As another example, the legacy building project referenced as well of the Red Line extension is an admission of failure to realize a cooperative agreement for Metra to effectively serve riders in the far south. Metra still does not have a station at 130th Street, and there are not sidewalks connecting Altgeld Gardens to the west of these tracks. The RTA has the authority to both guide station construction and build paths, and its years of neglecting to do so have led to an overdue multi-billion-dollar project. The RTA has been managed in a way that encourages the service boards to compete for ridership rather than share riders. That frustration has led to proposals like the Metropolitan Mobility Authority. No one expects personnel costs to decrease via a merged agency, but coordination of scheduling and coordination of capital project development can certainly be improved in ways that would save taxpayers money while providing a more effective transit service. Perhaps this will happen via proactive RTA, or perhaps this will happen through unified regional governance. But it is clear that an overarching authority will need to act to get us there. So let the legacy of this board be one of enabling greater coordination between agencies. Ask your service boards, are they moving trains? Are they moving customers? Or are they moving people? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure you share your comments on Franklin Park with Metra, Mr. Derwinski, and maybe Janice Thomas, who's the chief of staff there. But thank you very much for coming. Points are well taken.
And we can share them with Metra directly as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's move on to, there's no one else here in the audience that wishes to speak, right? Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, the executive director's report. Leanne, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, guests, and our guest presenters from the CTA and PACE, who will talk with you a little bit later. Our meeting today is going to largely consist of those presentations from CTA and PACE leadership, as we did with Metra last month. Our hope is to hear from each operator prior to the usual budget presentations about the progress they are making and then their plans ahead for future years. You'll also be hearing from Dorval about the capital amendment related to the Red Line South extension. I just have a few other quick things to update you with before we get into those presentations. First, I want to note that several RTA staff accompanied Chairman Dillard in attending the Illinois Public Transit Association annual conference in Moline just a week or so ago. The chairman delivered the welcome remarks, and RTA's own Rob Nash and Tina Fassett-Smith both did a team presentation on our legislative and our communications strategy related to funding and the fiscal cliff with the state legislature. The message was delivered at the conference by all three, by the chairman and Rob and Tina, that really though the needs of different regions might be slightly different, transit agencies across the state are different. There are needs that we all have, and working together is going to be important. We are all across transit, though, are united in our desire to see transit access and service improve for all riders. And we want to see that transit receives more public funding because all experience daily how vital to our communities that public transportation is. So moving on to the next slide, please. As many of you are aware, the Illinois Senate Transportation Committee continues to hold subject matter hearings about the future of public transit in the Chicago region. The chairman and I, along with other service board leaders, have testified and listened to concerns at the 4 hearings to date and will attend the final 2, which are currently scheduled for Thursday, the 19th in Northwest Cook, kind of Lake County area. And then Wednesday, October 16th is the final one scheduled right now in Springfield. These dates and locations, though, are subject to change, and we'll do our best to keep you all informed as they do. We post the information on our website, and we have been emailing the updates and information to you directly. Additionally, the Speaker of the House has announced the formation of a public transit working group to analyze Illinois public transit systems and make recommendations on how to better serve communities that rely on them. Representative Everdina Delgado and Cam Buckner were selected as co-chairs, and 13 other Democratic lawmakers were appointed to that working group. I, the chairman, and RTA Government Affairs and other staff continue outreach to both legislative leaders and the governor's office as all of this work continues. So next slide, please. As we move into the agenda for today, thanks to CTA President Dorval Carter and PACE's Executive Director Melinda Metzger for being here to present to you. Following their presentations, we will then ask you for a vote on 2 items. Actually, just to clarify, we will probably have a presentation from CTA, then take the capital amendment item, and then hear from Melinda Metzger on her presentation. And then to capture the votes on the capital amendment work. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 6B, which is a presentation on the state of, actually item 6A, which is a presentation on the state of the CTA. Welcome, President Dorval Carter. I was kidding him. He's the other President Carter. Good person to be associated with.
No relation.
2 excellent President Carters. Welcome, Dorval, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the RTA board. It's always a pleasure to appear before all of you today. Before I get started with my remarks, I would be remiss if I also didn't take a moment to acknowledge my colleague, Leanne Redden, and the recent recognition that she has received from APTA as the incoming vice chair of the APTA organization. I can tell you, and I gave this some thought, I am not aware of any other region in the country that has had an immediate past chair and an incoming vice chair going into leadership positions at APTA. I think that says a lot about the leadership within this region. It also says a lot about Leanne Redden, a colleague and a friend who I've known for many years, who is very worthy of the recognition that she's going to receive. And as I've told her personally, I will be prepared to assist her in any way that I can as she moves into this new role. It's certainly a kudo for RTA. Certainly, Mr. Chairman, you appreciate and understand the value that APTA brings to our industry and directly into this region indirectly with their advocacy and support. And I have no doubt that Leanne will be a terrific chairperson when she assumes that seat in a couple of years. So congratulations to all of you. I'd like to begin by providing the board with sort of an update regarding the Chicago Transit Authority's recent hiring and service delivery successes and milestones. That has obviously been a focus of our comeback from a pre-pandemic situation from the time that we've gone through this pandemic itself. As of August 31st, CTA has employed 3,873 bus operators, which on a full-time equivalent basis is more than we had pre-pandemic. and more than 400 more than we had last year. We have also successfully trained 133 rail operating employees this year, and our rail workforce is almost 10% higher than it was at this time last year. In terms of service during the month of August, we delivered more than 95% of our scheduled rail service, which is an increase from 92% from last year. On the Blue Line, there were more than 25% more weekday trips on a daily basis than last August. We filled more than 98% of our scheduled service, an increase from 96.5% from last year. And there are 15% more hours of bus service on an average weekday than last August, or an additional 1,826 hours per week. And average customer wait time on both bus and rails continue to improve over where we were last year. In addition, during July and August, our rail and bus maintenance staffs have deeply cleaned approximately 4,000 buses per month and 2,500 rail cars, which are at the highest levels that we have seen in the last 24 months. I want to emphasize that I'm proud of the work that we continue to do as we move closer to providing both bus and rail service that our customers expect and deserve. During the many recent conversations I've had with elected officials, transit professionals, and others who work in spaces related to public transit, I have been clear that I expected CTA's bus workforce and service delivery to return to pre-pandemic levels, and I have delivered on that promise. I believe we will do the same with our rail service, which I believe will be returned to its pre-pandemic levels by year's end, which was also the commitment that I made at the beginning of the year. I'd also like to take a moment to talk about the elephant in the room. We recently had 2 tragic incidents occur on CTA. As you are aware, 4 individuals lost their lives on Labor Day aboard a Blue Line train in Forest Park in what I can only describe as an unspeakable act of senseless gun violence. Unfortunately, the next day at our Howard station, a CTA employee was hit by a bullet outside of that facility. I want you to know that I've since visited that individual in the hospital, and I'm very happy to be able to report that he is recovering. But I think any discussion about these incidents and about crime and safety on CTA requires some level of context. And I think it's important in that context to understand the complexity of the size of the system that we are trying to basically provide safety for. CTA provides over 1 million rides each weekday, which is the equivalent of the population of the city of Indianapolis on a typical day. We have nearly 1,900 buses and 1,500 rail cars that transport customers across a service area with 145 rail stations and more than 10,600 bus stops. As you can imagine, that's a challenging endeavor that requires an ongoing, multi-agency, multifaceted, and multi-layered approach to safety and security. The tools and resources that we have in place are intended to help deter incidents of crime and assist local law enforcement in their investigation of crimes that occur on CTA. But many of the issues that we are seeing play out on public transit reflect the larger, very complex issues that are impacting the communities that we serve. On many occasions, I've made the point that CTA is a reflection of the communities that we serve, and in some ways is probably the most grandest social experiment in that there's probably very few things that we as a society engage in where, regardless of income, race, religious background, socioeconomic status, we have a common experience around. Public transportation is one of those examples. We work very hard, particularly with the Chicago Police Department and their public transportation section, to provide the law enforcement for a vast majority of our transit system. In addition to our relation with the Chicago Police Department, we also partner with other local police departments, including the Cook County Sheriff's Department, as well as suburban police departments that include both Evanston, Oak Park, and Forest Park. We supplement local enforcement agencies in their efforts with investments in tools that we use to deter and investigate crimes, including recently updating and expanding our comprehensive network of more than 33,000 security cameras, the expansion of both unarmed guards and 2-person K-9 teams who are deployed across the system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the support of the Chicago Police Department's Voluntary Special Employment Program, which provides additional volunteer off-duty police officers to patrol our system, The establishment of a strategic decision support center, which features smart policing technology and full connectivity to CTA's extensive security camera network, as well as detectives dedicated to CTA-related crime, and additional support from the district police officers who will assist and respond to incidents throughout our system as part of their ongoing responsibilities in their various districts. This is in addition to our ongoing efforts to both research and pilot the latest technology for deterring crime. And as I remarked to CTA's board of directors at their meeting yesterday, it is imperative that we have a broader conversation about what we are doing as a community to address issues related to crime, guns, drug use, and supporting those who are unhoused and are struggling with addiction and other mental issues. In that regard, CTA has engaged the City of Chicago's Department of Family and Support Services, as well as the Night Ministry, along with providing millions of dollars each year to social service agencies to provide outreach to the unhoused individuals and those dealing with mental health challenges on our system. As you can imagine, this work is never done, and CTA will continue to work hard to help keep our customers and our employees as safe as possible. Finally, I am aware that you are going to be considering, as part of your business today, an amendment with regards to the historic Red Line Extension project. Several weeks ago, we hosted a community event where I had the opportunity to discuss the project with individuals from the community. I think it's safe that it's hard to overstate the significance of the action taken by my board with regards to the Red Line Extension project last month. And I want you to know and understand that that action was not taken easily and was seriously thought through before the decisions were made. I'm going to do something unusual today in that I want to share with you at the RTA board level the information and the presentation that my board received when they made the decision to both approve the contract for the construction of the Red Line extension, as well as the funding necessary to implement that contract and make it happen. I also want to use this as an opportunity to explain to you why the costs of this project have increased so dramatically, and also why if we don't do what we plan to do today, this project will never happen. I don't think I need to tell any of you that this has been something I've been working on for the last 8 years to bring back to the city of Chicago. It is a project that is going to serve a community that has been historically underserved in ways that are unimaginable when we look at the city of this size and the size of the transportation network we have in place. I'm going to invite up right now Bill Mooney, my Chief Infrastructure Officer, and Tom McComb, my Chief Financial Officer, to walk you through a presentation that we put together for our boards so you can better understand the basis for the decision that our board made to move forward, as well as the reason why the board unanimously voted in support of not only the project and award of the contract, but also the issuance of the additional debt necessary to make the project happen. At the conclusion of their presentation, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have, either about the Red Line extension or about anything else that I've discussed as part of my report. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill and Tom to walk you through the project.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning. As President Carter noted, my name is Bill Mooney. I'm the Chief Infrastructure Officer for the Chicago Transit Authority. In September of 1969, as the lore goes, then Mayor Daley stood on the end of the platform at 95th Street and said, "Today we go to 95th Street. Tomorrow we will go to the edge of the city." For the better part of 60 years, that community has been waiting on that promise. When the Dan Ryan was built in 1969, it cost the city of Chicago $38 million. Can we advance to the next slide, please? If we were building the extension that we have envisioned today in 1969, when first constructed, it would have cost $144 million to build. Pause on that. Nothing gets cheaper with time, and certainly the opportunity cost that went along with this investment at that moment in time has been even greater in loss. The planning process for the Red Line extension formally began in 2006 when we started an alternatives analysis. Our budget, as we entered into the formal planning phase with our draft EIS in 2016, was $2.3 billion. When we secured our federal commitment with the entry into engineering in 2021, the project budget was currently set at $3.6 billion. Next slide, please. One of the most unique aspects about this project is this is a community-driven project. This is a community that has waited for 60 years for this opportunity, has never let the public officials know, has never held the CTA accountable for that commitment. In 2004, the community moved forward with a ballot referendum and actually got close to 40,000 votes from the 34th Ward and the 9th Ward at that time to support the investment in this project in their communities. Community has been waiting and the community has held us accountable. Shortly after that ballot referendum, the Chicago Transit Board took action in 2006, authorizing an alternatives analysis, which is the first step in the federal CIG program to start planning a project of this caliber to secure federal investment. Next slide, please. When we talk about the last 20 years of that effort, no more greater effort has happened in the last 3 years. We have secured our local match and our TIF. It is a unique opportunity in which we are securing funding from the downtown area and near downtown area to be able to support an investment in the deep south side while leaving the area along that investment available for future TIF and future economic growth in those areas. It is unique in that area. That magnitude of investment has never been seen in that community, and certainly does not prevent that future growth, really the project beyond the project. We have secured our federal commitments on the largest federal investment that the CTA has ever been able to partner on. And we have now advanced to the next key moment in which we have awarded our design build contract, which is the biggest investment in contract we've ever had in our history. Next slide, please. We talk about the Red Line extension. For those who aren't familiar with it, is a 5.6 mile extension that goes from our terminal currently at 95th Street to historical Alcal Gardens at 130th Street. It has 4 new stations planned, one at 103rd, 111th Street, a terminal on South Michigan Avenue near 116th Street, and then the major terminal at 130th Street. We often talk about this as historical Alcal Gardens. I mean it truly, and it is historical. It is part of the Registry of Landmarks. It is the first public housing project in the United States. It was planned for African-American veterans returning from World War II to work in the steel plants in the nearby area, as well as the Pullman facilities. Each of these facilities includes new park and ride lots, as well as a major garage at the terminal itself, as well as bus connectivity, walk-up, divvy stations, and other bike connections. The project also includes a new train storage yard near 120th Street and maintenance facility. Next slide. We talk about the overall benefits of the project in our 5 pillars here. At the heart of this project, it is an equity project. It is correcting a wrong of 60 years. 24% of the Red Line extension area residents live below the poverty line. That is 6% greater than the city on average. The frequency of service that they currently have in doing a multimodal bus connection, a bike to bus connection, a walk to bus connection, or just a walk connection means that having direct access to rapid transit service will result in a 30-minute time savings one way. That is an extra hour in a person's commute on a daily basis, an hour they get to spend with their family. They get to go ahead and coach their kids, help them with homework, an extra hour they get to take to make dinner and just decompress at the end of the day. That again, when we talk about that disinvestment of 60 years is the opportunity cost. You count up those hours in a person's lifespan, they've lost, in some cases, an entire lifespan in not having that transit access. We talk about the access to connectivity here, right? So when we talk about those first 2 features, that means now if I want reliable access to education and jobs, I, in many cases, to be able to do that, have to have car ownership. But when you couple it with that first pillar around equity investment, most of that community cannot have access to a car. It is not available. So then they become in a desert where they are neglected and not being able to get that connectivity access to things. We talk about that economic opportunity. 46% increase in newly accessible jobs within this community. When we look at this opportunity, it's about being able to reliably maintain access to jobs in your neighborhood, your next neighborhood, and furthermore out throughout the city of Chicago. Being able to have that connection that could get you to O'Hare Airport for opportunity. And as this board well is aware, there is no greater environmental investment in the region than transit. And this will create an opportunity to get cars off the road and be able to get people on transit, being able to do their daily commuting otherwise. Next slide. Look a little deeper into the numbers and we talk about the programmatic kind of equations we run when we do projects like this, and we're talking about over 12,000 jobs in the construction industry supported by this project. Those are direct hammer swinging jobs. Those are subcontractor DBE jobs. Those are downstream manufacturing jobs to support that investment. We talk about the indirect jobs that grow around that. That is the community that supports the project around the project around the project in many cases, and it's close to another 60,000 jobs that grow out of that. And once the project begins, opens, in 2030, we will have an opportunity to create access to another 25,000 jobs regionally for that community. Nationally, an investment in transit projects results in $1 investment to transit to a $5 economic return on the industry itself. If nobody believes that, go to the West Loop. When we opened the Morgan Station, there was nothing but empty parking lots, vacant land, and meat packing, and now it is one of the most vibrant real estate districts. If you look at the investments around the blue line on the northwest side, even it is one of the most populous areas to see transit-oriented development in support of that. One of the more unique aspects of this project is we are only successful when the community grows out of the ashes in this investment. And really the project begins the day we open the line. It doesn't begin the day we put a shovel in the ground. And that when we partnered with the city of Chicago to bring forward what we call the Transit Supportive Development Plan. We often talk about transit-oriented development, that investment directly around that quarter mile of transit. But the Transit Supportive Development Plan actually went further. It said, how do we look at the land stock, the half mile out, the mile out beyond that, the mile and a half out, so that this community can see investment to grow and leverage this type of growth. It was brought forward to the City of Chicago Plan Commission by the Department of Planning and Development. It was a partnership we had with them, and it was codified into the city's planning code by the Plan Commission. So this is the plan that they are going to be using to make the investment beyond the red line extension, and they've already started that. They've released their first RFP as part of their Invest Southwest program for this parcels around the Michigan Avenue Station in the south quarter there. That's currently under review for them. And there's bidders. There's bidders that are looking to develop already, knowing that this investment is coming. At the end of the day, we expect that the investment in the red line extension could catalyze up to almost $2 billion worth of real estate growth in that area. Next slide, please. The cost of time is painful. We talk again about that opportunity cost in this investment. If you look at the photo on the top here, this is South Michigan Avenue in Roseland in the 1970s. It was the place to be on the south side of Chicago. It was as elegant, as extravagant, as wonderful as what we talk about the Magnificent Mile in downtown Chicago. The lower folder there shows you South Michigan Avenue as it exists today, holding on by a thread. There is a business you can see actually in the photo there, the Ware Ranch Steakhouse. That has been the restaurant and dynamic opportunity for people went. That's where they had brunch on Sundays. That's where they went for to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. That ranch house exists today. It has gone through multiple rounds of ownership, and actually the latest rounds of owners reopened that restaurant in the spring of 2020, right at the heart of the pandemic, after investing every penny they had to revitalize and renovate it. That restaurant burned down in June of 2020, and they fought and they scraped and they reopened again. And every time I'm down there having lunch, I chat with the owner and she says, how soon are you going to start? And I say, oh, we start construction in 2025. We start, the big work in 2026. And she says, I hope I can hold on. And so we have a vision for that future for that owner. If you look at that next slide, and it's a vision that's codified in that Transit Supportive Development Plan. And this is what the future of Michigan Avenue can do. With that access and leverage of the type of investment the red line extension is going to create, we see the opportunity for growth around there, not just growth for new businesses, but for the existing businesses to have customers, to have that direct access. One of the more unique aspects of the south side on the red line especially is a significant portion of the ridership is interstation ridership. It is not commuters going from 95th Street to downtown. It's commuters going from 95th Street to the Jewels at 87th Street to go grocery shopping and then get back on the train and go home, right? And so there is a whole opportunity by creating an area of Chicago that has huge food deserts, right? To create opportunity for access to grocery stores. And I go out to 130th Street and we talk to the community. The number one thing to say is we want a grocery store. We want a grocery store. So next slide, please. I can talk about my experiences, but we had the privilege of having a lot of our community supporters come out to our board meeting last month and talk about what this project means to them and to the community as a whole. And we wanted to pause for a second to share one of those remarks.
Good morning to each of you. Thank you so much for having us. The Red Line Extension Project has finally come into fruition after more than 20 years, although it's been an idea on the CTA drawing board for more than half a century. Therefore, we are indeed excited that the extension of the CTA Red Line is becoming a reality. This is a historical moment in time, for it is the largest public infrastructure project developed for underserved communities in the United States of America. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said when he lived and worked in Chicago in the mid-1960s, this project is a check issued as a down payment to repair the damage of planned segregation, which Chicago is famous for. The transportation desert on the far south side is the historic result of Chicago's segregation by design policies. But while this idea sit gathering dust on the drawing board, it began to come alive as it was ignited and sustained because of a faith-based community organization called Developing Communities Project, who initiated, researched, advocated, planned, partnered, and worked tirelessly to achieve this goal. It was Developing Communities Project who collaborated with public, private, and academic entities, and yes, with CTA. Though DCP is as a formal organization is no longer active, we are assured that the work we've done will live in perpetuity in at least three significant ways. Number one, through other individuals and organizations who continue to advocate for the equity and justice for all things related to this extension project. Everything from workforce development to transit-oriented development, including contractual opportunities for local business development, and right down to everyday residents who are just looking for a way out of the transportation desert that they and their families have had to live in far too long. We trust that CTA will hear their voices and partner with them in every aspect of the project going forward, most especially in drawing on the community residents for employment opportunities when it comes to working on the project. We who have initiated and nurtured this process will be watching closely. And number two, the Red Line Extension Project is also a significant case study for research and instruction in urban transportation planning due to the work of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign clinical professor, Dr. Lou Turner, who could not be with us here today, but who is the Director of Research and Public Policy for Developing Communities Project over its work on the project. Let it further be noted that DCP's community organizing work included the historic 2005 referendum, which garnered 39,000 votes in support of DCP's effort to impel the city of Chicago to prioritize funding for the Red Line Extension Project. It was DCP which successfully advocated for then U.S. Senator Barack Obama and his Senate office to file the paperwork to include the project in the 2005 federal transportation bill. Finally, number three, the work of Developing Communities Project, including its significant body of work on the CTA Red Line extension, is in the process of being included in the Vivian Harsh collection in the Woodson Regional Library of Chicago Public Library Systems, so that the world may learn from this vital community effort and collaborative partnership. And so as we conclude, we're reminded of the lyrics of James Weldon Johnson's beautiful effort to capture our many fights for justice and equal parity in all forms. He wrote, "Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. This echoes the struggle of Developing Communities projects and its tireless efforts, which snatched the reality of the red line extension from the jaws of promises and procrastination. Many of us have learned with great consternation that the wheels of justice often turns ever so slowly, and we learn that that also includes the wheels of the red line extension. Yet today we can say to our friends on the far south side and all the way to Altgeld Gardens and Eden Greens that you are not some disconnected foreign entity of inconvenience, but that you are tax-paying citizens worthy of a public transportation system which addresses your daily transportation needs as well as anyone else's. And so, to all of those who have helped us and fought with us, from the living and the dead, and to all of our elected and appointed officials, we say now, in the words of DCP's founding executive director, President Barack Obama, yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can. Thanks be to God who gives us the victory. Yes, we can.
You can move on to the next slide. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say after that, those types of words and passion. If you were there, the energy in the room was historic. I've been with the Chicago Transit Authority 27 years. I've been involved in board meetings for better than 20 of those, and I've never had a moment like that. And I'm sure you can equate to that as well, President Carter. So where are we at in the timeline? I've talked about a lot of those major milestones we've made. We've secured our TIF. We have secured over $2 billion investment in federal funding. Pause and think about another project in the region that is pulling to the table $2 billion of federal investment as a single investment. The administration sees the value of this type of investment. They see the value in investment in people. And what's unique about this moment in time is we've made these decisions, and our board took upon the historic action of awarding that design build contract, is we made a statement about the type of community we want to be and the type of community we want to build. This is about our reputation and where we want to go as a city, as it is much of anything else. As we move forward, we are plowing through the final process of the full funding grant agreement process. It is a unique opportunity in which we write paper upon paper that says the word plan at the end of it, and you can stack it from floor to ceiling and then rewrite it again. We are looking and on target to secure that funding towards the end of this year, which will allow us to fully NTP our construction contract and start breaking ground. We actually are already advancing, doing advanced utility work as well as real estate acquisition and demolition in the core. There are shovels moving today, and we are seeing the impact of those jobs. And we look to open full construction in late 2025 with service opening in 2030, and that's when the investment sees its reality and its growth. What happens if we didn't take this historical moment in time? If you want to slip to that next slide, we'd be sitting here talking about this for another decade. We would have to start over again. We would have to restart that engineering investment in the federal process, which took over 2 years of work. We would have to go re-procure professional service contracts at greater cost to what we did today to advance this design in a different mechanism. We would not be able to take it forward as a mega project because this industry is already fatigued on the concepts of mega projects, and these bidders will not come back to the table again. We'd have to break it apart into more pieces. We'd have to make it more complicated. We'd have to delay it. We'd have to go and revisit our TIF. The timeframes would change and we'd have to get that legislation updated. We'd have to restart that, re-secure federal funding, putting us back in line in a queue, and ultimately pushing back our FFGA by almost 5 years puts us in a whole different political dynamic, puts us in a different political climate with a ton of unknowns. And I can guarantee no matter what we do here, that cost will not change. It will only go up because cost goes up with time. Next slide. This is one of the most remarkable graphs I've seen in the last 5 years, and this is the National Highway Construction Cost Index. This is the federal government tracks awarded construction projects along highway corridors, and they've been doing it since 2003. So this is a 20-year look. The chart ends at the end of 2023. It's a rear-looking chart that gets updated about every 6 months. New version should be coming out shortly. While you look at that spectrum, so over the better part of the last 20 years, you've had steady growth. It's gone up about 1.5 to just shy of 2%. But in the last 2 years, you've seen almost 50% growth in the index. That is not a matter of impact of inflation or escalation. That is truly a market shift. While we were in that time period, and you can note, right, when COVID happened and what that change kind of happened on that index, right? we started entering our budgets. We locked in our budget at engineering for our federal commitment, and we went out to procurement. We started our procurement process in 2021 for this complicated project. And so we entered into an active procurement right at a time that the market completely changed and went head over heels in that ends. And as you look at what kind of drove a lot of those things, it's similar things you've experienced in your life, right? Supply chain disruption. Okay, I ordered a new fridge. All of a sudden, it was supposed to be here on Tuesday, then it became Wednesday, then it became Thursday, then it became 3 weeks from Thursday, right? That's something you've experienced, but when you see it on a macro level with a major construction project that has a contractor that's responsible for delivering on a schedule, the uncertainty about when they're going to get their steel to build is huge. It has cascading effects that can draw down, and that's a major risk that they're seeing, right? Rising material costs. We started at the beginning of the pandemic and you had a 2x4, 6-foot 2x4 that cost $1.50 at Home Depot. Then we all stayed home. We started going, hey, let's renovate this. Let's do a deck in the backyard. We're going to be stuck inside. And all of a sudden that 2x4 became a $20 2x4 overnight with a blink of an eye. And it's happened to all material. It's happened variably which material. If you actually look at right about June of 2021, we actually saw steel index pricing go through the roof overnight. It went up almost 50% overnight. Now it's come down. Has it come down to where it was in May of 2021? No. Did wood ever come back down to that $1.50 a 2x4? No. There's a natural impact to that, and we've seen settlement. But being a contractor trying to predict that black swan event and which of those materials is going to change overnight created a whole lot of volatility and risk on jobs, especially jobs of this size and magnitude. One of the great benefits of the federal government, President Biden's commitment to infrastructure investment is we've seen a huge influx of money, not only to the region, but in the United States as a whole, but that has also resulted in a labor shortage market. While for many years, we've actually supported and seen growth in the professional service investment of kids going on to college, we've produced that. We've also seen a reduction in trade industry jobs, right? So that created there's a void in the hammers that need to be swung for these projects. And our contractors will tell us that not only do we pay the prevailing rate on these jobs, we actually oftentimes pay a premium rate. We're bringing in somebody from 150 to be our operator. We're guaranteeing them 6 or 7 days a week worth of work so that we keep them on this job versus them going to some other job. That we may actually have to gear them a 10-hour day or 12-hour day, and we have to build those assumptions into our costs. The amount of financing that a contractor has to take on to begin these jobs is huge. They will outlay $300 to $400 million in the very beginning to get all their material pre-ordered, to start lining up their labor, to start getting their project offices going, they're getting all their equipment in line. And that will be stuff that they won't bill for months to come. And so they actually end up financing a significant portion of this. And we've seen interest rates go to their all-time highs. That has also driven cost increases in those jobs. And when we procured the Red Purple Modernization Project almost a decade ago, everybody wanted to do mega project. It was one of the rising things in the industry. It was the fancy thing. It was the fad. After having done a bunch of them, contractors don't have the same appetite. So that industry of competition, the people willing to take complicated projects such as this on, has dwindled, and reduced competition also drives up price. And it's not just at the prime level, right? It's at the subcontractor level, right? They've seen a lot of challenges. One of those unique things that we actually have done on the Red Purple Modernization, we had to grow an industry around it. We had to grow a disadvantaged business enterprise industry to be able to support a project of that magnitude, bringing in over 50 brand new DBE firms, over 100 plus independent firms. And so we are doing similar here. But there is competition. There is still a limited market here. Next slide, please. This is not unique to us and not unique to Chicago, the challenge that we're seeing here. I'll flip through some slides quickly and a couple projects across the board. So this is the Santa Clara VTA BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. It connects San Jose to Santa Clara. It's a 6-mile extension. Similar, it's about 4 stations, very similar in nature to what we were building in the Red Line extension. At the initial cost estimate on it when it went to bid was $9 billion. It came in with an award just over $12 billion, almost a 37% increase. Next slide. Second Avenue Subway in New York. This is an extension of the existing Second Avenue Subway. This is the Phase 2 investment. They are sitting in queue for FFGA, and they've had to delay their FFGA because they lost their local funding commitments for this project. But while they were doing that, they already increased their budget 17% as they were moving into FFGA, as they were seeing the challenges around that market and seeing those pressures, and they have not actually even realized it at market as of yet. Next slide. Second, this is the Hudson Tunnel project, connects New Jersey to New York. It is one of the prime investments in this current administration. It has seen a cost increase over the last 4 years up to $17 billion. Only a small portion of this project has been procured to date, but it was a 28% increase from their entry to engineering to their final FFGA commitments. And, they haven't even issued the major award contracts yet. In LA Metro, San Fernando Valley, this is a major program. They've had a bunch of, it was a progressive design build job. When they started in the planning phase in 2018, it was a $1.3 billion project. It's now over $3.6 billion. They just secured actually a rapid fire, it's like a new program investment out of the federal government. You may have read about it in the newspapers over the last couple of days to give them about $800 million in federal investment in FFGA. But they've seen significant cost overruns. They've had to do a bunch of value engineering as that project's evolved over the last decade. So in advance of projects, next slide, please. In advance of projects this caliber, we looked at the industry, we studied best practices, we learned from our other mega project, which we've been very successful on, Red Purple Modernization, and we've taken on a lot of the opportunities that we've seen for managing risk around the cost in these projects. So we did take on advanced real estate acquisitions. There's almost 200 parcels associated with the extension itself. We started those acquisitions. We are significantly bought out at this point. We have very few parcels left that we are working to acquire. We have also taken upon almost $18 million worth of utility coordinations, working with ComEd, AT&T, and other suppliers, People's Gas, to be able to get their equipment out of the footprint. This was something we did on RPM that was very successful in managing risk on the contractor. If you talk to Walsh Floor, who's a contractor on that, they'll tell you that was one of the big things they saw as a great risk management tool there. We separated some of the packages here, so we broke apart. Tom, in a little bit, we'll talk about all the DB investment here. You'll see the number of contracts associated with that. Part of the goal was here to make as much opportunity for our contracting community as possible. I talk about the complexities around mega projects here and getting those competitions. So looking to break apart those kind of, especially something like our yard and shop, which is exceptionally technical and very preferential in the type of equipment we want there. And so we broke apart those opportunities. We started our procurement with a request for industry comment in August of 22. This allowed us to actually engage our contracting community, talk about ways we could become better partners, see where they solve risks around these things, and help us craft our draft RFP to that point. This was a two-phase procurement in which we actually went out and pre-qualified a bidding pool. We went out with a draft RFP to that pre-qualified bidding pool. We had almost 9 months of back and forth on that draft RFP where they provided comments. We worked through language. We worked through risks. We also took in alternative technical concepts. This is opportunities for that contracting community to tell us how they could make the job more competitive by doing it slightly different, providing us the same technical solution in a different manner. That ultimately was how we ended up with the segmental box structure we're currently building on the Red Purple Modernization. It was an ATC that came out of that procurement. What's unique about that is those are actually ideas that no matter which contractor came forward as a successful winner, we own the rights to. We took forward a stipend for unsuccessful bidders, which was actually a huge portion of keeping a bidding pool competitive. This, as you'll look around the industry, in many cases, mega projects of this size complexity are getting no bids or one bid, which makes it very challenging to talk about competitiveness when you only have one bidder. We were successful in not only pre-qualifying 3 bidders, but getting best and final offers from 2 of them. And the stipend is really huge in that. Okay. So moving on to who that award is, we have awarded our major design build contract to Walsh Vinci Transit Community Partners. It is a lump sum price of $2.7 billion. It includes authority for $147 million allowance. Many of these allowances are pass-throughs, so they will go work with ComEd to secure electrical services for those stations, and we will pay them back for that. The contract total value is just shy of $3 billion at 2.9. The award of this contract included a proposed budget increase of just shy of $1.16 billion. At this time, I'll turn it over to Tom to talk a little bit about that.
So before Tom starts, Tom's going to walk you through the financing side of the house. I know I've given you a lot of detail about the project, and it's way more detail than the RTA board normally would hear about anything in our capital program. But what I wanted to really impress upon you was the level of detail that we provided to our board that led to the decisions that we made about both approving the project and also increasing the funding necessary to make the project happen. So while I recognize most of this is not information you would normally receive or need to receive in order to take the steps that you need to take in terms of RTA's role, I think it's important, as I emphasized at the beginning of my comments, that you understand the basis by which the board make these decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom and let him walk you through the debt financing and how we're managing that as part of the overall project. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. Thank you, President Carter. Good morning, directors. Tom McCone, Chief Financial Officer. So what you'll see on this page is a summary of the funding that's aligned to this project. So, and I'm going to start at the top, and Bill mentioned this, and I'm going to re-emphasize it. The federal government has committed $1,847,000,000 to this investment, which the size of this investment in the region and in this particular location for a federal competitive grant program is absolutely phenomenal. And we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of this opportunity that we have worked so hard to get to. All of the project funding must be in place to receive full approval. So to get that money, the feds want to make sure that you've got all of your local money, any other money that's coming into the project. This, as I mentioned, would be one of the largest federal investments in our region from a federal competitive program. To provide additional funding, there is matching local funding. So as Bill mentioned, the Chicago City Council approved TIF funding for this project. Similar, you may recall this from the Red Line North project, that TIF funding went in place there. As some of that project funding, it has been successful in that project. We're using that same model, similar model here for the TIF funding match that the City Council approved over a year ago. And other sources of funding include CMAQ funding, so congestion mitigation air quality funding, carbon reduction program, state of Illinois, housing, federal housing and urban development, FTA areas of persistent poverty. So we've been advantageous as we've looked to bring additional funding to this project. Go to the next slide. So what you have before you today, and I do apologize, it is a little bit small because we're talking about multiple years and, as I mentioned, multiple funding sources. So you'll see many of those funding sources on this page here. So what we're looking at today is that local share match, and you can see we have the state of Illinois funds in there, and then we have the CTA bonds underneath there. So those CTA bonds are what we put in place in those out years, 27, 28, and then beyond, to provide that additional funding that's necessary to bring this project to fruition. At the bottom of this chart, you will see an additional capital amendment that'll come before our board and then before this board, which will put in place that TIF funding and that FFGA funding to finally round out the budget for the overall project.
And just to clarify, under the ordinance the city passed for the TIF, until the other funding was in place, we couldn't access the TIF money. That's why it gets added to your capital budget and our capital budget at the very end of the process. There is no issue with the TIF funds being available. It's just that they procedurally wanted us to put the other pieces in place before we added their money into our budget.
Then if you go to the next slide, I'm going to finish up by talking about the DBE commitment that's been a part of this project. Again, there's a lot of DBE commitments. So again, it's a little bit small. So I do apologize for the slide there, but that's a good thing because we've had a lot of DBE success on this program already. So it doesn't start just with the contract that Bill mentioned, but you can see all of the various support contracts that have been put in place to bring this project forward, and the DBE commitments and realization that come as part of that. And you see at the bottom there that the final contract there, the RLE mainline design build, 25% commitment during design, 22% commitment during construction. On the right-hand side, the dollars associated with that, over $650 million to DBEs. We could spend a long time talking about the benefit of these DBE dollars and how they're going to flow. We've had success with this contractor on the Red Purple Modernization Program. They've involved over 130 DBEs. 50 of them are new to the CTA, and they're projected to put forward about $200 million in DBE dollars as part of the Red Line North project that we've been in the middle of constructing. The final thing I'll mention is that we do have an additional workforce commitment as part of this project, so that these dollars and the labor hours that are a part of the project are going to be flowing to those that need it most, and that we're opening up those opportunities. Just demonstrating that how we build something is as important as what we're building. And so we're going to create a lot of opportunities through those workforce goals as well.
So that concludes our presentation. Like I said, I wanted to give you a sense of sort of what the board went through in terms of making their decisions. I know there are a couple of questions that I've heard that the RTA board is interested in understanding. Let me at least start by making a couple of points, and I can turn it over to Tom and Bill for any more detailed questions. One, the additional funds that we're adding to our capital program do not impact any of the existing projects in the capital program itself. We are not deleting or taking any other projects out of our capital program to do that. Likewise, and Tom can give you better, more detailed information about this if you want it. We do not anticipate the additional debt impacting our ability to continue to provide service or to continue to improve our service, as I walked through during our conversation about the things we've been doing over the past year. Finally, I can have Tom walk you through our analysis about our debt capacity and our ability to take on this additional debt. I think the thing that I want you to keep in mind is that, as all of you know, I have a $13 billion state of good repair need at CTA. And as such, we are always making decisions about what our priorities are in terms of what we fund and how we fund it. I think the point that I would make as we continue this conversation, the board has made a decision, my board has made a decision about what our priorities are going to be. And the red line extension is one of those priorities. And so we are comfortable with the decisions that we have made and the way in which we're prioritizing our capital program. And we are comfortable in our ability to provide the funding necessary to make this project happen. For all the reasons that you heard Bill explain, we are also comfortable in our ability to deliver this project within the budget that we have established for it. And we are prepared to do that, as we have shown in the past, as we have done for other projects, major capital projects that we have undertaken at CTA. Bill will tell you, and I would agree with this, that we have a very good track record of being able to deliver on our projects and keep our project costs under control. We have no doubt of our ability to do the same for this particular project. And as it is understood, when you enter into these arrangements with the federal government, the expectation when we sign that full funded grant agreement is that we will build and we will deliver this project. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or have my team take any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of your tremendous leadership on all three of you. Questions, comments? Director Colson.
Yeah, I've been following this project with interest. I even have my own little handwritten chart, the routes and so forth, and it is an interesting project. But the devil's in the details, as you know. And in this day and age, as you know, there are no bottomless pits of money for any project, no matter how desirable it might be. But I have questions about this new massive borrowing. This is the biggest borrowing I've seen since I've been on the board, and the impact it might have on our fiscal cliff. The first question, in August, reading your press releases and the Tribune coverage, August 2nd, 2024, the project was going to cost $3.6 billion. And now I look in September and it's up to $5.3 billion. I mean, are those figures wrong, or what? That's a pretty dramatic increase in a month, or am I misreading something?
Well, I think what you're misreading is the actual proposals that we got from the contractors that set the final price for the project. The reason we've had to issue the additional debt is because we received two proposals, which in the environment that we're in was actually very good. It is a reflection of all the work that we did to keep competition going in this. And for all the reasons that Mr. Mooney laid out, the cost increases in the industry and all the other things, those proposals came in at a higher price than we had originally budgeted. That was part of what we explained to our board when we went through the presentation earlier. This is not unique to CTA. It is not unique to the industry. It is not unique to transportation in general. And so we've had to make adjustments to our budget to reflect the reality of what it was going to take to get this project done. I would also remind you that, as Mr. Mooney indicated, this project isn't going to get any cheaper. He made the point that had we done this 60 years ago, it would have been $144 million. Now we're talking about a substantially higher cost as a result of that, and that is certainly reflected in the number that you heard, and the timing of it was around the time that the bids came in that required us to adjust the budget price.
So it was after that you're going to bond 1.99 billion totally. That's what the Tribune reported. Is that right? No, you're asking for 657 authorization today.
I think in the project budget, we have 1.6. There were previous bonds that were issued too, so that would be going forward.
Okay, and do we know anything about the terms of this debt? I mean, you're going to pledge sales tax revenues?
We've modeled it, as Bill mentioned, right? We've been going through this with the FTA for a while, right? In terms of making sure that we've got the capacity both to fund the capital side of it and then also not impact operations as well. So what we modeled was using the sales tax as a lien for the debt service.
And these going to be 40-year bonds with no principal payments for 40 years? I mean, you've
No.
had some of those.
No, we modeled it as a 30-year.
Okay, well, my calculations, 5% of 1.99 billion is $100 million a year, and 5% of 657 million, what you're asking today, is 33 million a year. And that's money that was not in the existing budget, right? I mean, this is going to be a new cost, new debt service cost.
The debt service amount went up, but there was always debt service in the plan. So we have increased it, but there was always debt service in the plan.
And you mentioned that this doesn't affect other capital projects, like state of good repair, rolling stock, bridges, infrastructure. How is that possible? This is a lot of money that you're gonna have to pay out in debt service that you didn't have
Yeah.
before.
What I said,
And it limits your ability to issue new debt service.
what I
Which other-
said is that it doesn't impact any of the projects currently in my capital program, and that's correct. We are still on target to spend the money we need to spend to do that. I think it's also important to keep in mind that over the course of the 8 years that I've been here, I have been very successful in bringing additional funding to support our capital program at CTA. I don't expect that to change. I expect that we'll continue to have other opportunities in the future that will allow us to address our ongoing needs, not to mention the success that we've had down in Springfield with our state capital programs and the work that we continue to do there. The $13 billion worth of unmet capital need to get to state of good repair is not a new issue. It's an issue that we've been living with, as you know, for decades. It is part of what we manage on a regular and annual basis in terms of our overall capital program, and it's one that we're comfortable that we can continue to manage as we move forward.
What impact is this gonna have on the fiscal cliff? We're gonna face $750 million fiscal cliff in 2026. Does this make it better or worse?
This is a capital project. The fiscal cliff focuses on the operating side of it. So this is separate from the fiscal cliff discussion.
Okay, but it's all tax money.
Everything we do is tax money.
I know, agreed.
But you know,
And fair revenue.
yeah, but I remind you that it's also for a public good. To the residents of the far south side of Chicago who have been without this investment for 60 years, we can't even calculate the lost investment opportunity that exists on the far south of Chicago because of the economic disinvestment that's taken place there. The return on the investment, as Mr. Mooney pointed out, is $5 to every $1 invested, and that in return is going to more than pay for the cost of this project in terms of other economic growth that will occur within the city of Chicago, the region, and ultimately into RTA's coffers as part of additional sales tax revenue that will come to us.
And I think lastly, I want to address the notion that we can't really question this or that it'll spook the feds or something. I've heard that argument being made, and that's
Well,
not the
that's
way
not my-
that's not the way government works.
That's not
And
my argument. Let me clarify my argument is. The point that I've been making is that I have to make a commitment to the federal government in order to get $2 billion worth of investment. That commitment has to be real. The federal government will not give us the $2 billion. It's not any different for any other project anywhere else around the country. It is part of how these projects work. It's part of what the expectation is. If I don't have that commitment, what I do know, and take it from someone who used to be the person that made these decisions on the other side, we will not get the $2 billion. As you heard, Mr. Mooney indicate, this is the largest single investment of transit funding in this city in its entire history. There's been a lot of work and effort that's gone into this, not only by CTA and our team, but also by our delegation that has been 100% supportive of this effort, as well as not only the current mayor, but the previous two mayors, the city of Chicago. And so within that context, I make that statement. It's not intended to be, a threat or anything like that. I'm just stating the realities of how these projects work and the fact that the federal government does expect us to make a commitment. That was what my board did at their board meeting. That was a commitment they made when they authorized the debt that we have the authority to issue. And that's the point that I'm trying to pass on to the RTA.
I understand, but I'm sure the feds know our structure and they know that you have to submit your budgets to us.
The feds know
You
our
have to-
structure.
Have to get our approval for this. They know all that. I mean,
The feds know our structure, but as you know, CTA has the statutory right to issue debt. We've always had that statutory right. It's not something new. It's why we've been issuing debt for decades. Yes, we have to submit an amendment to our capital plan, but the project has been in our capital plan for years. It's not a new project. It's not a new undertaking. We are merely aligning the dollars to reflect what the actual cost of that project is. I would suggest to you that that is not something that is unusual in our capital program on an ongoing basis. There are a lot of times when we provide amendments to our capital program that reflect adjustments we've had to make to project costs and other things to reflect the reality of what the overall capital program is going to be, as well as opportunities where other money comes in from other sources that we didn't currently have that allow us to ultimately fund additional projects that we may not have wanted to been in the position to fund in the future. And I kind of view this within that same context.
Okay, and you know, we have the statutory right to approve or disapprove your budgets too.
I understand that.
So we should be working together on this.
Well, I'm hoping that we are, because I have certainly spoken to this project before this board on more than one occasion. I've certainly shared with you the sense of what my board has undertaken in terms of why they want this project to move forward as a priority. And based on my experience with this board, I've never heard any real objection to this being a priority of our agency and of the work that we're trying to do. That's one reason why I wanted to be sure you got the full briefing that we gave to our board. That was the reason behind the decisions that they made.
Right, and I'm not questioning the wisdom or the desirability of this project, but you know, we got to crunch the numbers.
Well, you're right, but the point I'm making is that prioritization is an integral part of what decisions we make every single day around our capital program. The prioritization of the red line extension is something that's been deferred for 60 years. It's not about whether or not we have the money. It's about whether or not we prioritize this project within the context of the other projects that we're doing. The point that I'm trying to make is that my board has made that decision. They've said it's a priority that we do this. And so they're committed to moving this project forward.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the very intelligent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Carey.
I have one specific question and then some comments. The question, nobody disputes the huge increase in costs in construction. We're all well aware of that. Where we're coming from, I think a lot of us, in terms of a little bit of frustration, is that we see an agenda where a huge increase in bonding, and we increased the bonding in May by 300 million, I think, something, and this is over 600 million. And it caught me by surprise. And it would be nice if I hadn't been caught by surprise. And it's a result of you getting the contracts in, and it's 2.9 billion. When did the bid go out for that contract?
I'll let Mr. Mooney answer that in a second, but I think it's important to keep something in mind with regards to the procurement process itself. It was very important that we kept the procurement under wraps. In other words, who the successful bidder was going to be and what that cost was going to be. So not even my board was made aware of this until the week before the board meeting. So this isn't something where it was publicly known and we just didn't tell people. In order to maintain the integrity of the procurement process, we had to keep those proposals very close to the vest. There was a point in time when I didn't even know what the number was because I'm not a part of the procurement team.
Okay.
So this is the timing of when all this happened was fairly quick, but because of the size of this project, because of the interests that were involved, we had to make sure that we were not preliminarily disclosing information that might have given some sense of who was going to win or who wasn't going to win until that process was done. But I can have Bill give you the more detailed timeline of the.
And my question really is about, is there some point at which you informed your board that, gee,
Yeah.
it's likely to be a whole lot more money than we thought?
It was literally the week before the board meeting when we briefed them. The board is also not allowed to know that information until we're prepared to make a recommendation. That recommendation wasn't completed until literally a week before the board meeting. That's how close the timing was for the work that they need to do, the analysis they need to do, and then ultimately the commitments that need to happen in order for them to make for me to make the recommendation to the board. So all of this happened within a fairly tight timeframe.
Yeah, what I'm struggling with is on any project, you come up with an estimate in the beginning and it's bound to change. And it changed over the many years this has been talked about. But then all of a sudden it just jumped huge in several months.
It has jumped. Let's put it in context. The size of the project we're talking about is, you know, 4 or 5 times bigger than any other project we've ever done. So the number in isolation is big, but in the context of the overall project, it's not unlike what I might see on other projects that we work on. The project budget for this is always a very closely guarded secret. That is never disclosed to anybody. Because if the budget got out, then that would basically inform the bidders
The bidders,
on
right,
what they
sure.
should bid. The numbers that you hear publicly about this project were not just for the contract, they're for the entire project, the
Right.
entire cost. Within that is the price of this particular contract. But we certainly understood that there were going to be escalations around this, we've been in negotiations with these companies for months. But what the final cost was going to be, we didn't know until we got their best and final offer. And at that point in time, there was a select group of people who had to analyze that and had to make decisions on basically whether to move forward with the project or not. For all the reasons that you heard us explain in this presentation, the decision was made to move forward with the project because the option of basically blowing up the procurement and starting over again would have pretty much ensured that this project was never going to happen. And so those conversations were all taking place leading up to the point in time when a recommendation was presented to me that then I ultimately presented to our board, which occurred all within the week just prior to the board meeting. Actually, I should say the week. It happened the week of the board meeting. Like that Monday and Tuesday is when our board got briefed on this.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I want to make a comment about something you said, President Carter, which is you presented more information than you normally would. And as a board member here, sitting at the RTA level, I would love to hear more information. And I think as we talk about reform going forward, and I digress a little bit, I think one of the things I would like to see the RTA definitely be more involved from the very beginning. I realize it's CTA's project, it's PACE project, it's Metra's, but I really see a role for the RTA to be more involved at a regional level at the beginning of these projects. And when we get to approving the amendment, we're going to put a little bit of language in there that doesn't, it's just says the way we would like to see it done. One specific question Director Coulson didn't touch on is the tracks, and I know this has been discussed, but again, I don't know it in detail, the discussions. But the red line, the extension will cross Metra, I think in two different areas. And
In one spot.
I know there've been discussions and I realize, well, here, I'll let you answer it, but my question is, I would imagine they haven't been included to connect in any way because of cost, difficulty, whatever. I would love to hear a short explanation of that. And then second, is a future connection, are we doing anything that's going to totally preclude the ability to connect in the future?
Well, let me answer the last question. The answer to that is no. I would never do anything to preclude more connectivity between CTA and Metro. I think the location where there's been the biggest conversation about connecting is at 130th Street. I'm looking at Bill. I should probably have Bill answer this question instead of me, but thank you. Yes, but I think that there's a larger discussion that we all know is undergoing it's occurring right now around the region and its ultimate future for what our transit vision should be. I can tell you I have some very strong thoughts about that, and you'll be hearing more about that in the upcoming months. But there's no question in my mind that if we're going to leverage the tremendous infrastructure for transit that we have in this region, a part of that conversation includes better connectivity between CTA, Metro, and PACE. And I'm not just talking about the red line extension, I'm talking about throughout the system. As we look at the travel patterns of what people are starting to do now and how they are changing, everyone's not coming in and out of downtown Chicago every day. all of our rail systems are being more challenged about how we're going to meet those challenging travel patterns. I think it's going to be an area where you're going to see opportunities for not just CTA, but also for PACE to really leverage our bus system, which is quite honestly one of the best in the world, to basically maximize our rail infrastructure in ways that allow us to do things that we haven't done before. My board just just yesterday got a very interesting presentation on the opportunities around our bus system and its improvements. And I think that is something that this board would probably find fascinating as well. And we can certainly talk to Leanne about getting you that kind of a presentation. But it really, I think, speaks to the possibilities of what we can do in the future. But to more broadly answer your question, absolutely. I'm supportive of better connectivity and more opportunities to improve those connections going forward. Now, I'm happy to let Bill explain a little bit more about the Red Line extension, which is it's a unique project in and of itself.
So the point of crossing you mentioned specifically is just, it's about 118th Street where the Metro and CN run and the UP crosses, and we run parallel to the UP the whole way. And so there is an opportunity there and the design for the bridge structure that goes over the Metro and CN doesn't preclude the ability to potentially make a future station connection there to the Metro Electric. In early planning phases, there were conversations with Metro about doing an intermodal facility if that would be something of interest to them. And so they said they had no direct desire for it at that moment in time, but they didn't want to preclude it. So we made sure we made accommodations for that. There's also land that we end up owning for staging and phasing in relationship to putting that bridge into service. That would be a potential thing that we see as a land that is not very ripe for development in the area, but certainly could be ripe for a station, intermodal facility station there. I think, the relationship of the two, they come together, they go apart throughout the kind of the corridor. There are points closer to Michigan Avenue where we are a few blocks walk, and certainly signage, wayfinding, the interconnectivity there for transfers on foot are readily available between the two routes. And certainly opportunities that we saw in how bus service gets modified to support the Red Line extension as well as the Metro Electric there. We are providing an accessible opportunity here, which Metro Electric is not fully accessible in that area either. And we see a complement. I think if you look at the map that you've got in front of you, you look at the city map as a whole, right? There are routinely corridors throughout the city that have both CTA and Metro service. Actually, almost the entire city has that replicable service going out to the suburbs. Take the red line, the purple line going north. There's a Metro line in parallel. You take the blue line going out to the northwest, there's a Metro line in parallel. You take the brown line for most of the corridor up until it splits, there's a Metro line in parallel. And so we see them as augmented services to each other. My favorite quotes that I've heard a lot, and Mayor uses all the time, right? Rising tides lift all boats. So, right, creating opportunity and desire for transit, and more opportunity for transit makes people become transit desirable, right? If I now have that service that gives me that short opportunity service fulfills my greater service need, I don't need a car. And now when I become less car dependent, I now look at all my service opportunities. Certainly a feature I use on my Venture app all the time. So.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I had other questions that you either have addressed or Director Colson asked related to, the effect of this additional bonding on potentially on operating funds and how it will be paid. And I'm interested in having, I think if my fellow board members are interested, having a letter drafted by staff and kind of recapping some of the questions we've asked. And I would love to see some of the things I know you have some diagrams up there, so maybe some of that answers my questions, but on paper, how you intend to pay for this bonding without impacting other capital projects and without impacting operating. And you could present that back to us as part of prior to your budget submission or as part of the budget submission. But that I think I'd appreciate that. That's all I've got, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Director. Director Gorman.
Thank you, Chairman Dillard. And also thank you to the questions that were asked and the board member or the CTA presentation because it was helpful. I did have a lot of, questions that, thanks to presentation and my fellow colleagues' questions, did satisfy, some of the answers. Especially around the lines, procurement, the 50% increases, the comparisons to other projects in New York and LA were very helpful, in stating, your cause and whatnot. And I do like the idea of the letter to lay out those plans, and that'll be helpful because giving enough, yeah, sure, there is, much information that was shared, and I don't mind being bogged down with that information, especially if it is prior to just the agenda that came out on Friday, and then here we are, less than a week here, to approve, that bonding. So, a lots is okay, less is not more, or, whatnot. So please do not feel that you're being bogged down, and even phone calls. I'm not, privy, you're not objective to a phone call, reaching out and, going through this, prior to it. So thank you for that. And just some background, for me personalized to humanize the red line extension, in the opposite way. Actually, growing up in Beverly, 95th and Levitt, 4 blocks east of 95th and Western. I made a poor decision as a child to hop on the 95th Street bus, take it to the red line with a friend of mine, Marty Burns, who's now actually a sports writer for Sports Illustrated. We hopped on that L to go to the White Sox game. At 9, 10 years old, that's probably not a good idea without your parents before cell phones and whatnot, but it was something that I think was really a great memory that, it did all pan out for us. But going in that red line extension opposite way, my dad was a firefighter at 119th in Michigan, the Roseland community and whatnot. So it is something near and dear, to me, having grown up in the area and the neighborhood. So I think it is something that's an absolute necessity to that area. It's a shame that, it was put off on us, 50, 60 years later, to do this now, because obviously it's only going to increase. I mean, back then it would have been, what, 150 million, and now we're looking at $1 billion per mile. I mean, that's craziness. And, we're like, geez, when is the madness of this funding going to end? And we can cut that, increase now, but it is with a heavy heart that those finances are so significant, and you even said it is significant debt, which it is. And, we just need to continue to work together, keep the transparency, the openness, the accountability together, where we can have direct communications, with the CTA board, and then you coming here representing their wishes to us, where we have to, oversee that. So, I mean, it is important, and I'm sure you understand the position that we're in, now, to, successfully, get this project, moving and continuing to move forward. So, I mean, with that $2 billion at the feds, we need to grab that money. That's going to be vital to continuing the project. So I do appreciate you being here. Obviously, you had to be, but how do you see the significance of that debt? I mean, because as Director Colson said, it does go to the fiscal cliffs somehow. Sure, it's in the capital bucket, but the operation side, we do need to, that's only going to increase it.
Well, a couple of comments. One, the harsh reality of the fiscal cliff is obviously a much bigger challenge than anything we're talking about here with this project. And certainly Chairman Dillard and Leanne Redden have been in all the hearings I've been in, where we have continued to press the case for significant changes in how funding is provided to this region to allow us to support the operational costs that we're going to have going forward. I think it's important to point out that the rigorous process that we have to go through with FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, to get this money requires us to show, amongst other things, how we will be able to continue to maintain our operations, even with the costs that we have to incur as part of this project. And that analysis is supported by the work that we've done with FTA up to this point in time. FTA will not approve a major capital investment if they believe the impact of that investment will basically be to shut down service elsewhere within a transit system. So we are comfortable with the basis by which we can both manage what we have to do while continuing to provide the service that we're providing to our customers, with the hope, quite honestly, with the conversation we continue to have down in Springfield, that those services will continue to increase dramatically, because we'll finally have the level of funding that we need to properly support the operations of the systems of CTA, Metro, and PACE.
No, I appreciate your comments, and then, hopefully when this red light extension is done, we'll have a better White Sox team.
I certainly hope so, as a fellow South Sider. They can't get any worse.
I just, one last comment, and I
Yes.
promise I'll shut up.
Director Colson.
I think this budget season is going to be real important. We're going to be looking at the increased debt you have and the decreased other capital opportunities because of this project. I think last year, like 28% of your capital budget went for debt service, and that's probably going to go up. So I think we're going to have to scrutinize with unusual severity the budgets this year, especially as we face the fiscal cliff. So I actually look forward to working with you on that process.
Dr. Geving. Jim.
Hi, thank you for the extensive red line presentation, which I did really appreciate. I didn't need a lot of convincing because I grew up in the 9th Ward, and I've been hearing about this red line extension since I was a teenager, which was, I won't say how long ago, but a long time ago. And I appreciate that you started the presentation with equity, because that is, I think, the most important reason for this, and I'm glad to see that it's finally going to happen. I do have a question about the earlier part of your presentation, which goes back to safety. And with the Chicago police officers and the other law enforcement agencies that are engaged, are you also engaging private safety officers? And are there officers walking on the trains, or are they just on the platform?
We do engage security guards. We deploy about 400 security guards and K9 units on our system every day. The security guards and the K9 units both cover the platform, and also we now have them starting to be on our trains. So the answer to your question is yes, we do have that. And I should also point out the mass transit unit of the police department also does both go on patrol our platforms as well as our trains.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Director Melvin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a few things. Excellent presentation. Thanks for all the details. I think it was really helpful in the discussion that followed. It's a historic event that you've come to talk about. Congratulations on working with the federal government to bring in that huge amount of money. That's a tremendous achievement on your part. And I think it's a great, there's no bad time to invest in Chicago. This is a great investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ross.
I wonder if you could just summarize for us then what the final steps would be from this point forward, assuming you get our approval today. What happens next? And how are those costs that were submitted by the bidders, how long are those bids good for? And what happens to this project if they default?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that they don't default. I mean, the partnership that is the prime on this contract is obviously a very well-known firm. Welsh is obviously very well-known here in Chicago, but DaVinci is also a very prominent international construction firm. I'm not really concerned about them, walking away from this proposal. With regards to the next steps, we have to complete our negotiation with the federal government for the grant. That's actually what's happening right now. It's one of the reasons why being very clear about our commitment to the non-federal match is so important, because that commitment drives everything else that the federal government will do. They are working extremely hard to bring this project to closure, to get the grant agreement signed by us by the end of the year. There's not a whole lot of time to do that because there are notification requirements and other things that have to kick in order to make that happen. I have gotten commitments from the Department of Transportation that they are prepared to do everything that they can on their side to meet that deadline, as long as we do everything that we're required to do on our side. One piece of which is showing our commitment to the non-federal match. That is why I am being so direct in my statements around why that commitment is so important. If they don't have that commitment, they will not complete their portion of the work, and this project will not happen this year. That puts at risk, I don't have to explain to any of you the potential what that may mean going into a new administration. And none of us want to face that possibility. You all may recall with the Red Purple Modernization Project, we faced a very similar timeline. That project also was signed literally, I believe, in the last week of the administration for similar reasons. Had we not gotten it signed when we did, I can pretty much guarantee you the Red Purple Modernization Project would not be happening today. So these timelines matter. The deadlines matter very much to us. I've got everybody lined up to do everything they can to make that happen. We just need to do our part.
Thank you.
Director Carey.
Just one very quick question, unrelated to the red line extension, but since you're here, I understand that CTA is working with Metro, with PACE, with RTA on getting a day pass program going. And can you enlighten us at all and where CTA is on that, and if you have a launch date?
We are supportive of it. You're absolutely right. CTA, Metro, and PACE have worked for putting in place a day pass that would allow someone to ride any one of our systems. I believe we've announced that. Yes, my partner at PACE is confirming that for me, but yes, we've announced that program has been implemented. And certainly we're excited about trying to show in another way the collaboration and coordination that exists between our agencies. I know we talk about that all the time, but it really is true. We recognize, and I can say CTA recognizes that we're all better off if we're all growing and getting stronger as a group. And the strength of our transportation network is the size and complexity of our system.
Okay.
And providing that connectivity, I think, really helps.
Okay, great. I wasn't aware that it had launched already, but
No, it hasn't launched, just to clarify.
been announced.
We've announced our commitment
Right.
to
okay.
doing it. I think the question is, as we all know, vendor support is needed, and that sort of
Vendor support.
making
Okay.
that priority to actually get us to the point of implementing is the key.
Okay, well,
next step.
whatever
And I should
CTA can do. I know you
should
hold the
point out-
contract, but
I should point out that we owe a great deal of debt to RTA for supporting the cost of implementing that program, because as you know, the challenges around these types of programs aren't necessarily the ability or the desire of CJ, Metro, or PACE to do it. It's really making sure we have the funding in place to support
okay.
the cost around it. And, that's one of the reasons why we're all down in Springfield fighting for more money.
Okay, thank you.
Director Yonan has a question.
Yeah, Director Yonan.
Thank you for this great presentation, President Carter. I really applaud again your leadership. Obviously, a great team that's behind you needs to respond to a great leader, and it's just great how you personalized again the passion behind getting this built. And just a couple comments, and then just maybe some commitments that maybe we can kind of put forward. Number one, obviously, hearing over and over again the opportunities of collaborating with PACE and Metra is great to hear, and how there are going to be even, more opportunities with this extension going down to 130th to be working with some of the south suburbs. I know that our partnership on the South Cook Mobility Study gave us opportunities for another unit of government that wasn't responsible for transit, but really is a partnership in looking at what, is taking place in some of these communities and and leveraging other opportunities of transit, as you heard in the public testimony period today. And just again, would love for there to be a continued commitment to, other government entities that could take leadership roles in that would be appreciated, number one. And then the second comment I wanted to make was along the lines of understanding the sensitivity of procurement. Again, Chief Mooney, I think this is a great, great story to be told about how to be able to take a project that, again, not throwing around terms necessarily on how the procurement process played out, but that, design build type opportunity that really demonstrates CTA's leadership in a time when you've got agencies, big agencies like the Tollway and IDOT looking to kind of find other creative and very, I think cost-effective procurement opportunities. And so again, applaud your leadership and how this came together. And it just asks that again, this might be something that we, for the sake, not just throwing the word transparency out there, but more importantly, just really, opportunities to have lessons learned through this process. If there could continue to be a spotlight kind of put on to some of the decision making, there is so much at stake, I think, with, again, the way infrastructure can be built. We're all rooting for the success of this and the way, you're going to bring Walsh and Vinci on and how they're going to, take on some of the liability. Maybe it was too much in some places. Maybe it's a little, understated in other areas. There's just going to be so much opportunity for lessons learned in here that we just ask for a little bit more of that. Again, I don't want to use the word transparency, but a little collaborative effort because the region is really looking forward to your leadership in this project in that sense. So again, just making those statements, we'd just love to hear some commitment on your end on that as well. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Director Yonan. And first of all, let me start by saying, yes, we are committed to continue to work with all of our transportation partners here in the region, not just CTA Metro and PACE, and certainly the county has been much more engaged in a lot of those activities in the future. So yes, you have our commitment to continue to work with the county and with other entities as we continue to expand and really grow the transportation network for the Chicagoland region. I think to your point about sharing our best practices and lessons learned, that is absolutely something that Bill and his team are committed to doing. I know that he does meet with his peers around the industry about major projects and things we're working on. I certainly have conversations with my peers at both IDOT and at the Tollway. We're always open to sharing our best practices and certainly our experiences and our common understanding of what's going on in the industry, because as we pointed out to you, the trends that Bill was explaining in our presentation are not unique to transit. They're impacting highway projects, they're impacting aviation projects, they're impacting everything right now. And certainly a lot of the things that we did here to mitigate those cost increases are things that we have learned from our peers and from other conversations we've had with others in our industry, and certainly we'll share them with others who wish to know more about it.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you, John. Any other comments or questions? I just have a couple. First of all, Mr. President, thank you for being here. And one sec.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Yes, she was distracting me.
Actually, first, thank
Telling
you.
me about a connection I didn't realize existed here.
I love it. Thank you for recognizing Leanne as she ascends her way through APTA. And I told the governor's office just yesterday or the day before, not only do we, through you and through Leanne and our staff, have the greatest cooperation and knowledge of what our peers are doing nationally, including the slides that Bill and Tom put up. We watch internationally. I mean, obviously you can tell from Leanne's accent that she's a worldly person. We watch what's going on.
She's not from the Bronx?
Yeah, not only what's going on in the United States, but internationally as well, and try to bring the best practices of our peers. But the fact that you, Mr. President, APTA President, and Leanne, shows the ultimate respect that your peers have for you nationally and internationally. At the Illinois Transportation Conference, chaired by an alum from Rockford of the CTA. I just tried to stress upon them without ever getting, that we're the big kahuna, that we all have to work together, but I tried to share the size, the magnitude of your operation and Jim and Melinda's operation with our downstate friends. There were many downstate legislators there, but I wanted to talk about the economic impact of the RTA in our region, and also remind them that on a daily basis, we essentially move 1/6 of the population of Illinois on the RTA system, and to try to give them, a dose of just what a massive operation it is. And when they're looking at numbers, you have to look at the magnitude, the size of your sheer operation. We're honored, let me tell you, to be part at the RTA in helping bring, the red line promise to the south side and far south side of Chicago, and expanding equity, as Jamie pointed out. So we're, very honored and very much a part of that process. And even with the escalating cost nationally, and you pointed out your peers are facing this through, that pressure through a lot of sides, there's tremendous value, and we are not backing off of our commitment to this process. And Dorval, and anything you need from me to assure the federal government that all your FTA place, and there's no one nationally that has a better understanding or a better track record than you of making sure that you understand the funding components of the complexities of our national government in terms of transportation. If anything's sent to you, I will make sure that it always has the clause in there that all your puzzle pieces are in, and we're not backing away from any kinds of commitments there, because I know you're dealing with a tinderbox of the federal government, and just making sure that everything is in place. But thank you for being here, and for your presentation. Excellent presentation, gentlemen. And to the gentleman to your right and your staff, they give me good comfort at night, knowing that we will figure out, as Director Colson has pointed out, we'll figure out how to do this. And thank you for your leadership on that. With that, just procedurally, you're staying? Okay.
I would still suggest that if, with the board's indulgence, that we would move to item 7A as the action item, which incorporates amendments to the capital program, not just for CTA, but also for PACE, but move to that item, and then we can come back and take that action, and then come back and hear from Melinda Metzger,
Okay.
the Executive Director of PACE.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and insight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate having the opportunity to talk to the board today.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to item 7A, which is an amendment to the 2024-2028 capital program and extensions to the ICE funded projects. And Brian and Malik's coming up, and gentlemen, thank you. Perfect segue from Dorval into you.
Good morning, I'm Brian Lowenberg, Manager of Capital Programs. Today I'm going to cover an informational update on the capital evaluation metrics implemented as part of Transit is the Answer, followed by the request to approve 2 ordinances, an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program, as well as an amendment to the ICE program. Next slide, please. As a reminder, Transit is the Answer implemented new metrics to assess the regional capital program. There are 15 metrics based on the 12 themes you see here that have been used to analyze each of the projects in the 2024 to 2028 capital program. We update the evaluations of the program with each capital amendment and share the updated information on our RTAMs within a few days of the amendment getting approved. Today, we'll have a closer look at one of these capital evaluation metrics to demonstrate how the capital program is addressing this regional priority. Next slide, please. Today's feature metric is access to key destinations. So what do we mean by access to key destinations? Key destinations are defined as jobs, retail, healthcare, education, and recreation locations in the region. And the evaluation determines the degree to which a project improves access to the region's key destinations. There are 4 options to measure this impact: significantly improves, moderately improves, maintains, or has no impact. What we can see is that 34% of funding in the capital program, or over $2.5 billion, provides a moderate or significant access increase to the access to key destinations. In addition, 42% of funding maintains the current levels of access. Of note, state of good repair projects generally fall into the maintains access category. And as you can imagine, with the great deal of state of good repair need in the region, a majority of projects are falling into this category. Now let's look at a couple of types of projects that move the needle on access to key destinations. Next slide, please. Our first group of projects can be categorized as expansions or extensions to the system. These projects increase transit's reach to customers in underserved areas. Projects include the previously discussed Red Line extension and Metro's new Auburn Park station. These projects expand the system to new areas, making it easier for riders to use the system and access key destinations through the region. Next slide, please. Our next category of projects increasing access to key destinations is accessibility projects. Accessibility enhancements expand the transit network to more customers. These types of projects increase the customers that have access to the opportunities at existing stations. Some examples in the program include CTA's All Stations Accessibility Program, as well as Metro's Olympia Field Station on the electric line that will be made accessible. Next slide, please. Finally, let's look at projects that are designed to improve speed and reliability. Improving speed and reliability creates service customers can rely on to access more destinations. These projects ensure that customers can move quickly to access these key destinations throughout the region and make riding transit more competitive. First, we have Pace's Pulse line that will be constructed on 95th Street. The line will bring faster service, allowing access to more destinations. Also, we have Metro's Rock Island Corridor enhancements, which will provide speed enhancements for both Metro and Amtrak services between Chicago and Joliet. Next slide, please. Let's move on to our ordinance. So our first request is for an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program. The funding for the 2024 to 2028 capital program includes changes to approved funding and projects for CTA, Metro, and PACE. The overall program is increasing by $831 million. CTA's program is increasing by $788 million, with a mix of reprogrammed state funds, new federal discretionary grants, and an increase in bond issuance of $663 million, $658 million of that for the Red Line extension and $5 million for other projects. Metro's program is increasing by $6.5 million, with all changes being reprogrammed state and RTA funds for vehicle purchases and communication improvements. And finally, PACE's program is increasing by $36 million with a new federal discretionary grant and positive budget variance funds to purchase buses. Details of all revenue and project changes can be found in the memo and schedules 2A and 2B in your board packet. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at some of these changes in detail. In August, CTA's board approved a contract to construct the Red Line extension. As noted, the contract was for $2.9 billion, which came in above the anticipated $1.4 billion budget. In order to close the funding gap, CTA is adding $658 million in bonds to the 2024 to 2028 capital program. Let's walk through how the funding will change with this and future amendments for that project. Next slide, please. First, let's take a look at the funding program to the Red Line extension to date. Before today's capital program amendment, there were $1.24 billion programmed towards the Red Line extension. This includes $100 million in funding programmed in previous years, as well as $1.14 billion included in the current program. As noted, today we are adding $658 million in additional CTA bonds, bringing the total program bond funds to $1.48 billion and total program funding to $1.9 billion. CTA is adding these funds to help unlock the full funding federal grant agreement, which is expected at nearly $2 billion. Let's take a look at future plan programming as well. Next slide, please. As noted, if today's amendment is approved, there will be 1.9 million programmed to the Red Line extension. The estimated project total is $5.3 billion, so we can see that CTA has $3.4 billion additional to program. Let's take a look at how those additional funds are expected to be added to the program in future amendments so you can understand the entire funding plan going forward. We are expecting that CTA will program the federal full funding grant agreement and the city TIF at the December capital amendment, adding an additional $2.92 billion to the program. We further expect that CTA will program approximately $500 million in additional CTA bond funds in program years 2029 and beyond. Because 2029 is outside of the 5-year time horizon, we will not see those funds in the current capital program. CTA has been careful to match the timing of these bond issuances to the need for funds to minimize the borrowing costs associated with these issuances. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at a few other awards that we're adding to the program in this amendment. CTA received a $111 million award from the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Grant Program to improve the Blue Line Forest Park Branch track between Kedzie and Pulaski. This project will refresh the track in the area and remove slow zones to improve riders' commute, similar to the Blue Line project that replaced track from Halsted to Illinois Medical District that was completed this year. Next slide, please. Next, CTA received $1.5 million federal discretionary award from the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Program, which is quite the mouthful, but is also known as a SMART grant. CTA is partnering with the Chicago Department of Transportation, which has been implementing smart intersection technology throughout the city. CTA will build upon existing technology using components of machine learning to identify CT buses and communicate with the signal controllers to provide a bus jump queue, which speeds up buses bypassing cars waiting at the intersection. Next slide, please. Finally, PACE received an award for nearly $31 million in the Low and No Emission Bus Grant Program to replace buses. For this award, PACE will be purchasing hybrid buses that help ensure that PACE continues along the path to a greener future while ensuring that their older buses are replaced in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Finally, let's take a look at our second ordinance. This is a request for extensions of ICE-funded projects. This quarter, Metra is requesting extensions for the following 4 projects: passenger information, mobile application, crew optimization, and platform heating technology. CTA and PACE are not requesting any extensions this quarter. Next slide, please. So to conclude, staff requests adoption of the following ordinances: approval of an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 capital program, and approval to changes to the ICE program. We're happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we're seeking your approval of these 2 ordinances.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions of Malik or Brian? If not, how about a motion and a second to approve item 7A? Director Melvin moves, we approve 7A, seconded by Director Groven. With that, Director Carey, you have a question?
I have an amendment.
Yes, you do the amendment.
I think the board has it in front of them. Under the whereas clause, the beginning of ordinance, the first one, not on ICE, but on the capital amendment. Whereas the RTA, I make a motion that we add this, whereas the RTA board recommends service boards continue to engage RTA staff early in the planning stages of regionally significant projects to ensure maximum transparency and accountability for the use of local dollars.
Excellent. So you want to make a motion that we
Make a
add
motion
that?
to add that.
Seconded by Director Gorman. Joey, why don't you take a roll call on that? Let's do that.
Director,
Just to clarify, an amendment to just that amendment to the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Coulson,
Aye.
Director Fuentes,
Aye.
Director Gathing,
Aye.
Director Gorman. Aye. Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Tondo,
Aye.
Director Ross,
Yes.
Director Yonan,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes, so
All
we'll add that, and I know there's a printed copy in front of you, to the actual, amendment on 7A. With that, Director Carey has moved, seconded by Director Groven, that we approve item 7A. And with that, how about a roll call?
Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Colson,
Aye.
Director Fuentes,
Aye.
Director Gathing,
Aye.
Director Gorman. Aye. Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Rotundo,
Aye.
Director Ross,
Yes.
Director Yonan,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
There are 12 ayes,
thank you.
one absent.
Dorval,
two
it's
absent.
unanimous. Um, All right, thank you all very much. 7A is approved. We want to do 7B and then we'll come to Melinda Metzger. 7B is the travel expense reimbursement.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
for the record, I think we should just clarify, maybe we should take another vote on the second ordinance, because I think we were just specifically talking about the capital amendment. We had the ICE extension, so if we could just do a quick motion and a second and a quick roll
Absolutely.
call, or we could do leave for the last unanimous vote if you wanted to.
Let's do, is there leave for the last?
We need a
unanimous
motion,
vote?
and did we get the motion in the second?
Need a motion. Director Ross, seconded by Director Gathing. And let's do leave for the last unanimous roll call, or last roll call. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And that's, thank you. Should we do 7B while we're on the action items in case anybody must leave? So Director Melvin moves that we approve item 7B, which is the travel expenses, seconded by Director Carey. With that, Joey, will you take a roll call, please?
Sure. Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Colson, Director Fuentes,
Aye.
Director Gathing,
Aye.
Director Gorman. Aye. Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Rotundo,
Aye.
Director Ross, Director Yonan,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
12 ayes, two absent.
thank you, and that is approved. All right, where's Director Metzger? There she is. Thanll you.
I'm still
Melinda.
here.
Last but not least,
Thank you very much.
you're our foundation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Dillard, members of the board. I'm really honored to be here. And I'm also, I just wanted to also commend Leanne Redden for her appointment as vice chair to APTA. And the significance is in this region, sometimes we don't get recognized as to the good work that we do, but nationwide, having both Dorval and Leanne in leadership positions is really important. And so I'm really pleased that you got that position and look forward to good things that she's going to be doing. I'm pleased to be here today to share the good work that PACE has been doing. As you might know, it's our 40th year anniversary. And I've been lucky enough to be with the organization for 40 years. I started when I was 2, for the record. So the next slide, please. So I wanted to take a minute to look back on what has occurred in the past 40 years and kind of reestablish how we got to where we are with the 3 service boards and the RTA as the financial oversight. PACE was established in 1984. Prior to that, there was a lot of independent companies, many of them going bankrupt. The RTA took over some of them, and this might be new information for all of you. There were 4 companies that PACE now operates, West, South, Southwest, and North, that were under contract with the RTA. They had a consultant firm, ATE, who operated it, and the RTA held that contract. What was going on back in '84 was that there was not enough money in the system. And so the suburban mayors really got rolling and said, we can't have this. The suburban area does not have enough money. We have companies going bankrupt. We need to reorganize the RTA board. I actually worked for the RTA during that year, and we split up. We became the Suburban Bus Division, Metra, and CTA. And the rest is history. We've been working very hard. We work together. When we do fight, when the agencies fight, it's always about money. There's not enough money in the system, and we're trying to do what's best for all of the riders in the system. Since we've had the federal COVID relief fund money, all of the agencies work very well together to do a better job for all of our riders. And why I point that out is CTA has come to us, Metro has come to us and asked, can you do this? We're having a problem. Can PACE do this? And we, of course, say yes. I went to both CTA and Metro when we were having an operational problem and asked for their assistance. They said yes. The reason we can do it is there's enough money in the system and we'll figure it out after we get the operational problem solved. So it's been a very good relationship. But now I'm going to talk about PACE. What have we done in the past 40 years? I think we've been a pace setter. In the early 1990s, we introduced lift-equipped buses to the region. We were one of the first carriers in the country. We're back one still, sorry. I'm still on the other slide. You're getting ahead of me. I'll tell you the next slide. Thank you. We're one of the first carriers in the country to supply, to have a fully accessible fixed route system. In the early 2000s, we developed our van pool program. We're one of the largest van pool programs in the United States. And we also became the provider of all the 8A paratransit service, not only in the suburbs, but also in the city of Chicago. And we introduced our first on-demand service in Joliet. So we started to lay the groundwork for what we have now. Why do we have all these different programs, fixed route, express routes, on-demand, paratransit, dial-a-rides? Because we need those systems to work together to do a better job for our riders. And so we started to develop them, and now we have a full complement of service. We also spent some time working on our environmental issues. One of them, we got hybrid buses that are operating in Highland Park that need to be replaced. They're over their 12-year life. And we also, in 2016, we got our compressed natural gas operations at our South Division garage. That garage is fully compressed natural gas, and in about 5 years, we're going to have to make a determination as to what we're going to do with that facility and what kind of buses we're going to have operating out of that facility. We also are the first and the only carrier in the state of Illinois who can operate bus on shoulder. We started that in 2011, and we continue to expand that service to this day. And then finally, we implemented our Pulse Rapid Transit program with the first line beginning in 2019 on Milwaukee Avenue. So we've had a lot of innovations over the time. The newest innovations have been using transit network companies such as Uber and UServe. UServe is a company we brought in from the East Coast to provide some of our paratransit service. We've piloted programs like our Pace Connect, which is a late night service that we ran by O'Hare to pick up people who get off the Blue Line, cooperation off the CTA Blue Line, and go out to the multimodal facilities behind O'Hare. What we found from that is the service was extremely expensive. We couldn't continue to operate it because of the expense. But what we learned from that, and that's the importance of the pilot, is what we learned is there's certain segments of that operation we could operate with our existing bus service. So we expanded our bus service during the times when it was really needed to meet that multimodal facility. And then we decided that the rest of the pilot would be put to sleep. We'll get rid of it for now. So we experiment with things. Next slide, please. So why are these innovations so important? Because PACE's responsibilities are very complex. You heard from CTA, they have very complex operation also. Ours are a little different, complex in a different way. We operate in the city, we operate in the suburbs, we operate in rural areas, we operate in 274 communities, covering a service area of 3,600 square miles. And while we may be the smallest in this region, we're the 12th largest transit company in the United States. And I think that gets lost because we do have big sisters in Metro and CTA, but it's very important to recognize that. And as I said, we're the largest ADA provider, one of the largest in the country, and one of the largest van pool providers in the country. Next slide, please. So PACE's positive momentum has been on display again and again. And this past year, we've taken another step towards innovation with some enhancements. In infrastructure, we continue to work on infrastructure and technology investments. We placed a focus on partnerships with other agencies, stakeholders, colleges, workforce boards, and our passengers. And we advocated for the resources needed to create the system our region deserves. PACE is building on a legacy of innovation, and 2024 has been our best year yet. On the service side, our rideshare access program, RAP, which operates utilizing Uber and Userve, has seen consistent growth with over 3,000 customers registered and over 90,000 trips provided since its launch in March. In June, we added trips to routes along 95th Street and River Road to provide additional weekend and late night service. And Sunday service on 95th Street now operates longer with increased frequency on weekends and weekdays. Service on River Road now has 4 additional overnight trips throughout the week, including weekends for third shift workers who use PACE buses to connect with the cargo area by O'Hare. In August, we added 38 inbound and 41 outbound trips to Bus on Shoulder express service, providing more direct trips and increasing capacity as ridership continues to grow back to pre-pandemic levels. Service on Manheim and Cumberland were also expanded in August, capitalizing on recent trends showing a greater demand for weekend service and late evening service. 2024 also saw the expansion of our on-demand service in Arlington Heights and Rolling Meadows and in Round Lake area in Lake County. And this October, we will see the launch of a new on-demand in the Lansing area in the south suburbs. We also started new Van Gogh services from Rosemont and Itasca. And along with our partners in Will County, we've expanded Dial-A-Ride service to offer service to more communities in southwest Will County. Next slide, please. All of this innovation has led to continued ridership growth for our entire system, including ADA. In fact, our ADA service is over our pre-pandemic levels. We're about 6% higher than we were in 2019. And what this has shown us, and it's very encouraging to us, is that what we're doing is working. We're seeing our ridership grow. The dark blue line on the slide is our fixed route ridership. The light blue line is as I call it, peacock blue, is our ADA ridership. And all of those ridership numbers continue to go up. And again, the only reason we can expand our ADA service the way we do is because we've partnered with TNCs to provide some of that service. Next slide, please. And we continue to make infrastructure investments. In July, we celebrated the progress of our South Campus with the opening of our Central Safety and Training and Customer Relations Facility, which includes a CDL training course. And we are on target to open our acceptance facility before the end of the year. This investment in the south suburbs will help PACE modernize operations and bolster this agency's south suburban workforce. I want to thank the RTA for your commitment to that and for being part of a lot of the presentations we've made on this. I also will say why this is so important this time is we are now in the midst of a massive hiring program. We are hiring more drivers than we've ever hired in the past. And to have a centralized training facility where we can take them on and train them off the road is really an amazing thing for us. Right now, up to about 2 months ago, we had to train our drivers on the streets that everybody's on. We now have our own test track. If you ever come out, we'll even let you drive a bus on the test track. It's in Markham. And we'll be happy to take you on a tour of it. Next slide, please. That's right. That's what we like about it. 2024 also saw progress for our technology initiatives. We integrated our on-demand service, our Van Gogh service, and our ADA paratransit trip check features into a transit app, which has been well received by our customers based on the usage experience. When comparing July 2024 to the same time last year, there was a 30% increase in monthly active users at just over 12,000 people, and a 43% increase in transit sessions at 559,000 people and a 28% increase in the app downloads. And in July, we saw 2,700 new users downloading the app. Why is this so important to us? Because PACE has so many different ways we are operating our systems. You can use PACE Bus to go up to the Liberty Mundelein area and get on an on-demand. You have to know how to connect. Our app lets you not know how to do that. You can use Metra to go into to some of our on-demand areas. The app will connect Metra to our on-demand service. Our paratransit riders can use one app if they want to use fixed route, or they want to use Metra, or they want to use us. They can use this app to transfer onto the paratransit app to show when their next trip is on paratransit. So for us, it's important to tie everything together. A little bit more important than our sister agencies because we have so many ways we're operating our business. The other thing I just wanted to mention on technology is our transit signal priority technology, which is the technology that our buses go through red and green lights. It will hold the green light longer for us. It's very important for us because it gives us better productivity on the service we provide, makes us more efficient. We've received $2.5 million in community project funding from our federal Congress people to deploy TSP along different corridors in both Cook and Lake counties. And we're continuing to develop that out. We're actually working with IDOT on, it's going to be a pilot project where if we can use their technology instead of using our own technology, it will be cheaper for us to employ the transit signal priority, and more importantly, we can get it out there faster. Next slide, please. Connected to everything I'm talking about today is our partnerships. PACE is partnering with CTA and Metra on fare integration and service coordination. The service boards, as you have heard, are working with the RTA on the introduction of a regional day pass, which we're hoping will be coming sometime this fall. And we're partnering with our communities on service enhancements and infrastructure improvements. And we're also partnering with community colleges and workforce boards on our recruitment efforts. In addition to the 10+ community colleges we work with, we most recently partnered with Amazon on a career advancement program where Amazon employees who are looking for career growth can benefit from training provided by Amazon before attending one of PACE's recruitment events to take the next steps in their career. So we're partnering with them when their employees have advanced to a point that they want to do something else. They come over to us and we get them into our operations system. So it's been a great partnership, and we will continue to collaborate and partner, and it only makes our transit system better for our riders when we do that. Next slide, please. We're also focusing on our efforts on Project Zero. This year, we deployed our first electric bus on 95th Street, and we received our first electric paratransit vehicle. In addition, we secured just over $800,000 in community project funding to aid the purchase of an electric over-the-road coach to test in our Bus on Shoulder program. And we received another $1 million for the purchase of electric paratransit services in McHenry County. And as you just heard from your own staff, PACE was also awarded a $30.9 million low-no federal grant to purchase 33 replacement electric hybrid buses, which allows us to reach our goal of operating a zero-emission fleet by 2040. While PACE continues to make progress on this initiative, we understand that we have to remain open and adaptable to alternative zero-emission technology. This is particularly important given the challenges that the industry has faced with bus manufacturers and the significant amount of funding needed for not only the equipment, but more importantly, for the substantial upgrades to accommodate the infrastructure to support the operations. I just want to take a minute to refer you to the chart up on the wall. On that wall, it shows 7 of our operating divisions. We have 10 operating divisions, but 7 are up there. The beige bar shows what the current facilities are designed to accommodate, and the green bar shows what we need to accommodate with EV vehicles. While we've made great strides, we still have a long way to go, and having the funding to move forward is the key. Most of our facilities were beyond capacity. That's what the chart is showing, and we have to redo them before we get electric buses in. Next slide, please. So with all this exciting updates I shared today, I've saved the best for last. While continuing to improve our system is a part of what we do every day, PACE has launched our revision initiative. Revision is PACE's networking, revitalization, and system restructuring project, and is the opportunity to rethink our entire network of service and reimagine how we meet the transit needs of our region in this post-pandemic environment and into the future. PACE has brought a consultant on board, Jarrett Walker, to help evaluate where and how often PACE routes should run and what types of transit service are appropriate in different areas based on the existing and projected future markets. Our plan to update and modernize our service offerings has made great progress this year with involvement of internal and external stakeholders in a network plan which will be completed in 2025. I just want to point out, if you take a look at this slide says everything to me. The red lines on the slide are where we have 15-minute service. You can see there's only about 4 of them. The purple lines are where we have 20-minute service, and the blue lines are where we have mostly 60-minute service. There's some 30 minutes service in there. These stark comparisons prove that there's simply not enough service in the suburbs, and this is the time to change it. I also want to point out that we are actually, by luck, using the same consultant as CTA is using on this project. They're doing they don't call it revision, but it's similar, and we're doing a revision program. They are also working with us to kind of collaborate and see where we can do a better job together, where we need more service. And really, so far what they've found, and the final results are yet to come, is that we need more money in the system. There's just not enough service there. And as I know you all know, compared to other states in the United States, we are not getting nearly enough to operate the kind of system, the robust system that we have in this area. Next slide, please. As you can see in the chart on the screen, we provide significantly less bus service per capita compared to our peers. So we will and must be bold in what we propose. We are developing options that show not only what we can do with current resources, but what we could do with transformative investment. It will include innovative pilot programs so we can efficiently implement and test new mobility options. It will include more frequent service, more late night service, more weekend service, more on-demand service, because that is what the suburbs need. We will continue to be a good steward of the taxpayer resources while maximizing access to jobs, education, medical services, and other destinations. I'm pleased with all the progress we've made today, and I'm pleased that the PACE staff has worked so hard to try new things and try innovative programs. But we know there's more to do. PACE operates a system that is funded to meet the demand that existed in the 1970s. Despite the fact that there has been a 62% increase in population in the collar counties since 1985. And for PACE to serve all those new people and the evolving transit needs, we need the resources to do so. And we will stand with the RTA and fight for those resources. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Director Carey.
Thank you, Director. A great presentation. A quick question on Project Zero as it relates to the grant that you just got, 30 million, and you're buying hybrid buses. Why? I don't remember talking about it. I know you went from CNG, diesel to CNG, and then looking at electric. Why hybrid as opposed to battery electric?
Several reasons. Number one, I'll start with, we ordered our first group of battery electric buses in 2021. We won't get them till next year, hopefully. The delays in manufacturing have been tremendous. There's not enough electric bus manufacturers in this country. The contract that we held was with Proterra. Proterra went bankrupt. They've been bought by another company called Phoenix. There's been some struggles to get the buses out of the manufacturer. There's not other places we can go to grab buses quickly. So we need something in between before we can continue our road along to electric buses. Hydrogen buses is something that we have in our capital program too. We're going to start testing that. And what I always say to my staff, you really have to be adept in this field because in 2 years, it could be moon dust that we're using in our buses. We don't know. The field is changing a lot. We're moving forward. Our first garage that will be electric is our North Division garage in Lake County. The 12 of those 22 buses will go to Lake County as soon as we get them in. We're right now doing an outside platform for electrification. We can't even put electric buses into our garages yet because we don't have the infrastructure in the garages. So there's a lot of planning that has to go in this. So we're gonna have those buses housed outside. We are gonna have to move out of our facility in Waukegan to another temporary facility, redo that garage, and then that garage will be fully electric. So we'll have one fully electric garage. As I said, south, we have a CNG garage, which was the best at the time when we built it. That garage, we're actually looking to make hydrogen. It makes sense to us because it's a compressed natural gas. We can change that over to hydrogen. We have 5 years to kind of figure that out. We're gonna
Okay.
get a few buses into tests with hydrogen now, see how it works, see how we like it. Hydrogen goes farther than electric. For us, that's better. So there's a lot going on and we're just moving with it. But for right now, we're asking for the EV hybrids. The other thing that's really amazing about these new EV hybrids, I said we already have hybrid buses in our system. What has changed is these have tremendous technology in them. So you can geocode a bus. If it's going through a residential area, it will shut down to EV mode. And then when it goes back on the expressway, it will switch back to normal fuel mode.
Mhm.
So you can do better things with these buses.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, not a question, but a comment. It was interesting that your revision initiative, that you're using the same firm that CTA is doing with a similar initiative. And again, thinking in terms of potential reforms, it would be interesting in a future world if that was done at the RTA level and they had a single contract with, assuming a more regional approach. You had a single contract with a company to do that and enlisted all the service boards in working on that together. It's fortunate you're using the same one, and so there's going to be more crossover than there might have been if they were different
Yep.
vendors.
I appreciate that comment. I think when I said we're lucky, we each went through our own procurement process. Again, what Dorval indicated before, a lot of that is held close to the procurement people. So we didn't collaborate with each other because we can't. And we both came to the same conclusion with that vendor. But I understand your point about long-term planning. Thank you.
Chairman, Director Yonan and Director Fuentes have questions.
Director Yonan.
Yes, just wanted to make a comment and thank the executive director for her attendance. Cook County on Tuesday evening hosted a transit summit in the northwest suburbs, and it was a great showing of a number of folks that really had a lot of great questions that the executive director really did a great job of just listening, taking some great notes. Thank you again for the commitment with your staff to also be there, to be able to just do some one-on-one kind of discussions with folks. And just wanted to, just again, thank her personally and appreciate again today's presentation and all the information you shared.
Thank you, Director Yonan, and thank you for attending also. Truly appreciate that.
Director Fuentes.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just like to thank her and her team for their commitment to the ADA part of their system. I've participated in almost every meeting that we've had with the ADA group, and I think all the services boards do an excellent job, but their commitment to always improve is greatly appreciated to that community. And I just want to thank you again for your commitment in making it a better system. Thank you.
Thank you so
Phil.
much.
Any other questions? Yep. Director Moen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation. I get your excitement. It's exciting when you talk about it and all the changes and stuff like that. On this chart, it goes back to 2020. Are you back at pre-pandemic levels or?
I wish. I will tell you where we're at. So again, ADA, we're beyond pre-pandemic levels, which makes sense. Those are the people who really need the service, and we've provided the whole time. The one point I want to make, we were providing more service with about 20% less drivers in our system. So that's why we had to get really creative, and that's when we brought in the TNC companies. On our fixed route side of the house, we're at about 70%. It varies. We have about 100,000 weekday riders that we carry each weekday. We're usually at about 70,000 to 79,000, 80,000 on a daily period. And what we're seeing is the progressive going upwards. So we're very pleased with that. We're noticing also, build it and they will come. When you put in 15-minute headways like we did on Dempster, our ridership jumped almost 20%, almost the next day. I mean, it was so quick, we couldn't even believe it. And our weekend service is also seeing about 30% jump. Why is it? People's travel patterns have changed so much. It's not a Monday through Friday travel pattern anymore. Now we're seeing a lot of weekend travel.
That makes sense. And just two quick other questions. You mentioned the rate of change. How do you keep up with all the technology changes? Is it the vendors coming into you and showing you stuff and you pick what works, or?
We're government. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
We go through a bidding process. We look at what vendors have to offer and start to pick out what we really want to see in that. In technology, some of it you can do yourself, but sometimes it's better to partner with companies who are already doing it so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
I think in technology, we saw the biggest need to tie our system together, which is why we partnered with a company called Transit. And if you don't have the app, I recommend you download it. It's a green app, and then change it over to the PACE logo so I can see it on all of your phones. But in any case, we partnered with them because they could tie in our on-demand. If you go to, for example, there's other places you can go for transit information. Google, for example. Google will not show our on-demand. It won't show our paratransit. It won't show our Van Go. So this ties our system together with Metra and CTA. Where we're going to go in the future, I think that's something that we really need to have discussions. CTA is already looking at bidding out another system that will tie all of the transit operations together with fairing, which makes sense, but we have to figure out how to get there. So this is a step. We're partnering with a company in a step, and it's moving us forward. We'll continue to move forward.
Oh, that sounds great.
Can I just add another
Yeah.
thought, and Melinda touched on it at the beginning, is our relationships with organizations like APTA. So understanding what our peers around the country are doing and what vendors in the private sector are also contributing in that space. So staying abreast of all of that, I think, is really helpful for all of us. And then she touched on the front end, to pilots that, so you get the idea, you maybe test some things out, and then you can learn from that and then look to implement that in a more, in a more productive way, even than what you maybe initially thought. So it's sort of that combination of really thinking further ahead, thinking regionally, thinking nationally to some extent, and learning from others as well to bring those good practices back here.
I just might add that our TNC partnership started out as a pilot. We did it in one county. We said, we're going to try it, see how it works. And what we found is it was a win-win-win. Number one, our customers love it.
Mhm.
Number two, it's more cost efficient for us.
Mhm.
And number three, we needed them at that time, and so we expanded that then after it worked, and we figured out what worked, didn't work, we expanded it to all 6 counties.
That sounds like a great program. Yeah, I like the innovation. Last question, the Amazon relationship, how did that come about? You could briefly just.
We started to talk to Amazon. Amazon has a model that you work there and they give you a chance for advancement. It might not be within their company because, again, they're in the mode, the mode of making a profit. So the amount that you can make may not go up. But what they did was partnered with us and said, okay, this person's worked with us for 5 years. They want to move on. We've trained them to do this. Can they fit into your organization? And we look at it. We tell them we're having a hiring event. They come to our hiring event. And if they match our criteria, we move them up into our organization. We've been looking for any way to get new drivers and mechanics into our system. It's a hard market, and we really have been expanding ways to do it. I said we have 10 partnerships with community colleges. They get them in, we pay for training. Once the people are trained, they come over to us, and then they go on that new test track. For 6 to 8 weeks, we train them, and then they're ready to go out on the road. So the partnership with Amazon is one way we do it. We work with workforce boards for people who are looking for jobs to feed them into our system. So we have lots of different ways we do it, and Amazon was just another way to try and help get people into good jobs. And I will tell you from my personal experience, I started out as an intern. There was no way I was staying in transit. You learn to love it. You learn to love it. You love the people aspect of it. It does two things. We have to do a lot of analytical work. We have to figure out where the routes are going, how they're going to go, et cetera. But on top of all that, more important than all that, you're helping people. And so if we can get more people to experience that and really understand what we do is not just, you know, get funds, put service on the street. We're helping people to get what they need.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Love your innovation. Our new director, our newest director, Melinda, Director Rotondo, he is an expert in apprenticeships and other things, and I encourage you to have a cup of coffee with him and vice versa and pick his brain.
I love it. Thank you.
which is
I look
great.
forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for everything. Doing
Thank
a
you very much.
tremendous
Appreciate your
job.
time.
Thank you.
You've had a long meeting.
All right. Are we at new business? Any new business to come before the board? If not, I want to remind you, our next meeting will be October. It's hard to believe it will be October 17th at 9 a.m. If there's no further business to come before the public session of the Board of Directors, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn in a second. Director Rotondo moves that we adjourn, seconded by Director Melvin. All those in favor say aye, or by leaving.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you all. We are adjourned.